So here I am, soon to be getting joined by Chris Minor, and this is the TruthSayer network, the TruthSayer studios, and we are Unscripted. We're going to be having a very open and very candid conversation today. We're going to be looking at those that hide in the shadows. And we're not going to be focusing on the dark magi and their word magic or the subtle manipulation specifics as we see it politically. We're going to be looking at the more arcane side of this, the spiritual side of this, and just exactly why this is happening is going to be a big part of the conversation. How this is coming to be, where this comes from, how ancient, how old is this phenomenon that we're looking at? And is it because of beings that are here in our society that this is happening, or is it because of off-world beings, or beings on-world, or in-world, or underworld? But it's going to be quite a broad sphere. We're also going to be looking at phenomenon like, possession and various different ways in which this can come to be, these spiritual entities. The eighth sphere is going to come up. We're also going to be considering the nature of this experience of reality from a shamanic perspective, of course. So yeah, buckle up, sit tight. Chris Minor is going to be here in a few minutes. I think he's just getting himself all ready and steady so that he can get into the tready. I hope I've sent him the right link. Just let me check quickly in case I've sent him the wrong link. It can happen. But I don't believe I have. Okay, yes. He hasn't said to me it's the wrong link, so it's all good. So, yeah, I would say that, it's very important for us to be able to get a perspective on what exactly is happening here. And in order to get a perspective on what is happening, we really want to look back. We want to look back to look forward. By the way, those of you that are watching, I hope my audio is okay. Let me know if there are any issues with the audio. I've been playing with the settings since last time. And there seems to be a slight sort of, is it a camera lag or is it my imagination? Is it just me imagining things? No, I'm on the right internet connection. Everything seems to be running as it should be. My mic seems to be quite soft, but I'm not sure if that's supposed to be that way. Reduced background noise, that should help a little bit. And that's the only thing I'm going to be adding onto my mic. So, moving forward. Namaste, Vincent. How are you doing? Are you well? Sending you big love. My cherry, how are you? It's evening where you are. Is it still a bit low? Let me know if it's still a bit low. I can turn it up. I'm just very afraid of turning up my mic. Let me know if there's any disturbance when I turned it up. I turned it up just a tad. I'm afraid of that button. Last time I turned it up, I created all sorts of hiri-kiri on the system. So yeah, these entities, these dark entities, who are they? And oh, Vincent, it went higher, but is it good? Is it sounding right? Okay, great. Good to hear. Good to hear. Thank you, guys. So these dark entities, now this is, for me, this is a very personal story, because there's those of you that don't know, I drowned when I was 3. And I drowned because of entities. And so this goes back. And when I was about 5, I got electrocuted because of entities. And so I almost left this world twice. But once I actually did start to leave this world, and then I was pulled back. And the second time I was in the etheric next to my physical body, trying to find a way to overcome all this electricity going into my body, because I got stuck in the mains with my fingers in the wall. In 1978, 79, when I electrocuted myself, the plugs holes were bigger. They didn't have those small little plug holes yet. Yeah, in South Africa. So anyway, I got stuck in the walls, and it was a long time. I literally smelt my brain burning. But both times it was because entities were talking to me. They were saying to me, first time was like, yes, you can do this. You can go into that water. It would be fine. And don't worry, you can get your boat in the middle of the pool. It's going to be okay. You're not going to fall in. You're not going to drown. Don't worry about the stuff that adults tell you. And I was literally having an argument with these beings. Well, there was one being that was sort of louder than all the others, who convinced me that it's fine. And when I got electrocuted, it was the same thing. They were saying, you know what, you should put your fingers in there, in those holes in the wall. And I was like, no, I've been told that's dangerous. They were like, do you believe everything you're told? You can't believe what the adults say. They just say that because they don't want you to experience this. And so both times I was manipulated by beings. And then I grew up with beings around me my whole life. And, you know, there were bad beings looking for me. And then there was a good little dancing, funky little guy dressed up in his cute little suit. He used to come and dance for me. And he was a small little guy. I didn't know about leprechaun yet. But so I grew up with beings. And they would come and dance. And then those big sort of weird animalistic beings, like shadowy beings, wouldn't be able to find me. And obviously as I grew up, you know, I got acquainted with those that had passed over. I got acquainted with other non-physical beings. When I was 12, I ended up at a seance with a Ouija board, and everything went wacky after that point. All my ESP reawoken. I was back in the world of beings, like deep thrust. So my whole life, I've lived with the awareness of these other beings. And a lot of people don't believe in them. They think like, well, these beings don't exist. And it's what led me on my path, you know, to go and live in the wilderness. I wanted to be in a place away from electronics, because I noticed there's a connection with electronics. And that's very interesting. As a child, I noticed there's a connection with electronics and these beings. They would behave differently around electronics. And by electrics, by plugs and by like electrical things, they could affect lights. They could affect things, radio. They could affect that kind of thing when I was a little boy. And ever since I've grown up, that's just been something I've been more and more aware of. So what are these beings? Who are these beings? That's really the question. And who are these dark beings? Now, my son has coined them spitty. He's not seeing them at the moment. Sometimes he sees them in the dream time. But we have Chris Minor. Welcome,
My
dear
bad,
brother
brother.
Chris.
Sorry about that, man.
Dude, you guys have got to go and check this dude's video out. He's got some really cool music videos. He's a singer from a band. So he's a good singer, actually. He's got some really cool music videos. He's a thinker, he's a philosopher, he's a spiritually inclined person that has studied a lot of different spiritual sciences, very much embedded himself into Steiner's work and other work from occultists. So he's very much an occultist. He's a magician in his own right. And he's just a super awesome guy. Welcome, everybody. Chris Minor. Lovely to have you. An honor, brother.
Thank you, man. Thank you, dude. It's good seeing you, brother.
Lovely, man.
I was trying to stream this to my channel too, but shoot.
Did it not? Are you logged in on the
Here, hold on. I might have to hop out and hop right back in really fast. Because
cool,
it's I think I'm on the roundtable group, like the group member thing on StreamYard.
Okay.
So I'll be right back. 1 second.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, basically this whole notion of these beings, they've tried to hide it from us. They've tried to indoctrinate us into believing that these beings don't exist, that it's all superstition, it's all woo-woo, it's all la land. Now, who's done this? Whose interest is this in? Well, if you're a dark magi and you want what you do to be hidden, you don't want people to be aware of the fact that there are these other beings. You would prefer to exist within a worldview where everything's just solid matter and that's all there is. Because these other beings are a big part of the agenda. These other beings are helping. And I believe, my opinion is, these beings are behind the agenda. And we're going to get into the eighth sphere and just exactly how this whole little story works. And so my son, he was aware of these up until about a year and a half ago. His awareness started to slow down. It's normal for children when they get to about six, around that age, 6, 7 years old, they slow down their sensitivity to these other beings. Now, as adults, we're taught by our parents to tell children that the stuff that they experience in their imagination isn't real. That's just what we do. And it's our own ignorance and our own fear that really drives all of this the way it is. And I think that it's really important for us to recognize the mind control and the PSYOPS for what it is. Because at the end of the day, we're being PSYOPSed into believing a particular worldview, right? Whichever that worldview is. And there are a lot of them, and that's very interesting. They've given us like a menu to order from, right? You can order goat droppings, cow droppings, or sheep droppings, or, you know, bullshit, or bird shit. Like there's a choice of things to order from the menu, but it's all a bunch of shite that they've given us. Whichever worldview we go to, whether we pray at the church of religion, right, and follow that strict code, or whether we pray at the church of science, because science is also basically a religion these days, the way it's treated. Not that it is a religion in its pure form. In its pure form, it's something quite profound. But the way it's treated these days with the so-called fact checkers and the so-called facts that change every few years, right? No, this is the fact. This is how it is. Until, we made a new advancement. No, it's not like that anymore. It's now like this. How can you call something a fact if it's prone to change in the next 10 years? It just doesn't work that way. So real scientists don't use words like facts. Real scientists use words like probability, likelihood, apparent. It seems apparent that these are the conditions. So we're basically being moved along these sort of lines of belief in order to disbelieve the whole notion that these spiritual entities exist. And these entities are very much a part of our day and our night. We just don't realize it. We think of ourselves as being separate. We think of ourselves, the first lie they told us was that our minds are on the inside and our bodies on the outside. The first lie they told us. Inverted and upside down, right? Rather than getting us to recognize that our thoughts are not inside our minds encapsulate our bodies. So they inverted it, inside out. And so when we start to realize that our thoughts are outside of our bodies, suddenly we hear things like people talking about seeing auras, right?
Yeah,
what do they see?
Work. All good.
Did it not run to your channel?
No, I think it's because like you made me a team member on the roundtable one, so it like won't let me attach back to mine. I think I have to like somehow. Maybe it's when I get a paid account of my own, then it will let me. I'm not sure. It's just being super weird. That's fine.
Do you want me to take you off being a team member quickly?
If you want to, it's up to you, man. I don't know how many we're gonna gain from my channel right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's do it.
So like, or you can just you can download it and post it as a video.
Yeah, I could always do that too.
Yeah, because you're a team member, you can download it.
Yeah, we can do that.
And then you can chop it up in the
Yeah, yeah.
editor
Let's do that
into
then.
like 1 hour pieces or whatever you want, and then we'll sort this out. I didn't realize that would stop it. Dang.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like it'll let me stream to yours, which is weird.
Just open a second instance.
Yeah, that's what I was doing, and it's like, and
Use a second browser, a
yeah.
Firefox browser. Log in on a different email, a different thing than you are on now, a different YouTube or a different Facebook or whatever, and then have that thing streamed to your. Does that make sense? And then just
actually,
turn the mic and the camera off of that thing, and then on the bottom, we won't put it on the screen. It'll just be a little block on the bottom, just sitting there, but streaming to, and you can put as many of those up there as you want. By the way, instances like. You get a different browser. Every browser can have a different instance. You can have 3 browsers open. So yeah, these beings are like basically a part of our life. So we think of ourselves as being minds inside bodies, where actually what's inside our body is just cables and hormones carrying these mental impulses into a physical storage device.
We'll worry about that later because I don't have Firefox right now, and Safari won't open it for some reason. So all good. I'll download it and post it. No worries at all. No worries at all.
Much love. Yeah. Well, yeah, brother. I was just getting into how they've got the worldview into us believing that these other beings don't exist, and how it's so important for them to have us trapped in this worldview of like superstitious ideas of other beings. It makes it easier for their magic spells to work more powerfully if we don't believe that any of this stuff is real.
Exactly.
Because then we'll just be in denial of what we're experiencing and seeing, even though the spells are affecting our consciousness. We'll be like, no, I've got free will. Yeah. What do you think?
I mean, I think that it's, hold on, am I echo? Sorry. I feel like with so many technical difficulties. Do you hear an echo or no? You know what I'm going to do? Because I'm hearing an echo on my end. I'm going to do this.
Yeah. I'm not hearing an echo, by the way.
All right, I'm good now. That's good. But what was I going to say? Okay. Basically, I think it's kind of silly to not think that if you're someone who thinks that everything stems from consciousness and there's a source consciousness, that somehow the archetypes of that consciousness aren't playing out in some level or another in the physical. Like it's silly to think that, I think. So I think that it's likely that you have evil entities, you have benevolent entities. So you have everything in between as well. And it's, to me, that's just logical that consciousness would evolve this way before getting to us. It wouldn't just jump, because it would be trying to navigate, trying to find its way to becoming the exact type. It's like a fractal, it's a fractal. I don't know if we lost Franklin now.
No.
Are you back? Okay.
I'm right here, brother. I was just closing the window because of all of the noises of the birds outside. I thought it would disturb the sound. But I'm with you. Panpsychism.
Yeah, I mean, well, because with panpsychism, is that more along the lines of we were created by basically like an alien entity?
The way I understand panpsychism is that Pan represents the earth and physicality and objective beings. And psychism means that basically the first principle of Hermes holds true, that every physical thing comes from a mental plane. So it means that there is a consciousness to everything on an energetic plane. And so that everything in the universe, even for example, the laws of physics, come from a consciousness. Everything comes from consciousness into physicality. And I mean, it's explained in different ways, but that's the way I've always understood it, which means that, even stones have intelligence, which is why you can program water or rocks with magic.
I like, okay, if that's, I don't know why lately I feel like I've been hearing them try to define panpsychism as it had to mean, it would mean basically, like, I feel like this is you have mainstream scientists and evolutionary biologists who are using this now, who are getting out of the whole Darwinism thing, and they're saying panpsychism is the way it goes, but for that to be the case, we have to be seated here by an alien extraterrestrial race. And I'm just like, what? Because what you're saying makes sense to me. What they're saying doesn't. I don't see that even. I'm looking at it now. Finally, on Wikipedia, just even reading. I don't see where they're getting that from.
They're sucking their thumbs after sticking their thumbs in an unholy place.
Yeah.
And that's why they're pulling a face. Because nothing's supposed to taste that way. So that's my impression. I mean, the word pan and psychism comes from Greek, right?
Mm-hmm.
So psyche means soul.
Yeah.
Right?
And pan is whole,
which
everything.
Means mind. Mind, soul, consciousness. And pan means physical manifestation. So basically the word panpsychism only means that there is a relationship between the soul of the world and the physical manifestations of the world, and that everything is a reflection of the spiritual, the mental, which is the principle of Hermes. The first principle is that everything is a mental. So this is where panpsychism comes from. But what happens is, like we know, the woke agenda.
Yeah. Yeah. And you could even see here on the Wikipedia, even it's talking about how quantum mechanics and neuroscientists are all getting into panpsychism. So I'm sure they're trying to redefine it.
This is part of, okay, so this is very interesting. We're really starting to get into the nitty gritty here. This is how they've done it. So they took the Bible. How many times did they re-edit the Bible? How many times was
Jesus.
How many edits? I think it's 50,000.
I bet even more.
I think I found the information once. It's anyway, it's like tens of thousands, maybe 50,000, 25,000 words have been changed in the Bible over the time that we've had the Bible. And so you've got these poor people walking around calling themselves Christians. And, you know, once you've edited that many words, you've basically changed the Bible.
Yeah.
Because those edits are certain keywords that are edited, and those certain keywords are edited again. And those certain keywords are edited again, changing the whole narrative. You know, instead of he ran to the shop, he walked quickly to the shop. Then he walked to the shop. Then he ambled to the shop. You know? So he was running to the shop. Now he's just sort of taking his time strolling to the shop. Two completely different notions, you know?
Well, and then we have people like Amon Hillman who are coming in, and I don't really know. I don't know what to make of him, because I mean I don't support the pushing of Satanism, which he like, even though he's using it even if he's not using it in a way that means what would come to mind with the stereotypical view of Satanism or the Church of Satan, he's still using it and pushing it, and then using these, what he's saying are the correct translations of the Bible, that I don't understand how this would have gotten past everyone else for as long as it did. Doesn't make sense to me.
Who are we talking about?
Amon Hillman.
Okay.
Or Professor Amon Hillman, I should say. I mean, I don't have anything against the guy. Like, he's pretty funny. He's a funny guy. Interesting to watch.
I don't actually know the guy. I should probably go and find him and take a look. But look, I think when it comes to talking about the Bible, anything goes.
Yeah, I mean, he's a linguistics he's a classical Greek linguistic professor. He's very good with the ancient Greek. So he basically has it as like Jesus in the garden is raping a little child. Like, that's like,
I'm aware of this. But you know, when I look at that, I know who you're talking about. I'm just bad with names. I saw, And I remember watching this guy doing an interview, and there were a number of things that he just simply took out of context, took out of everything. I think that like the problem is that when you want to sell a narrative, you can. Any highly intellectual person, and he's also talking about how it's all about drugs, use of drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, like you can twist things to be that. Like if I'm talking about the soma of enlightenment, you could say, well, you're talking about drugs, if you really wanted to interpret it that way. But you could also say you're talking about that high consciousness which comes from secretions in the brain, which is a drug, but it's not necessarily a drug that you're taking in. It's an internal process that produces its own drugs. So your brain is its own pharmacy. It doesn't mean that you have to make a concoction of herbs to get that experience. You can get that experience without herbs. Like, so I noticed that guy was like reaching, and I think as well, I'm really skeptical of the so-called people with all their PhDs and doctorates, just because of the way PhD and doctorates work and the peer review process and the system. And I'm also really skeptical of the so-called history that we've been taught. And I think that it's been taught to us in a particular way. And it makes sense that a satanic narrative would have that twist on the Bible. But at the same time, I think that because the Bible has been so edited and edited and edited, it's easy to come up with that. Now, this guy could say that he's looking at the original scripts of Greek, right? But the truth is, we're shaking a tree when we're looking at ancient Greek. We're talking about a language that wasn't spoken for thousands of years. We have approximate translations, which we believe is quite accurate. But if somebody from a third world country were to read English, right, and study English from a book, they wouldn't understand you and me having a conversation because of the metaphor and nuances, the way we speak. So we cannot pretend to interpret what those ancient manuscripts were saying because of the way that language works.
Yeah.
Unless you were there and you actually know the language. It's like you when I go to India, people say certain things and I might understand a bit of Hindi. I wouldn't be able to follow some of the things that they said if they were making a joke, because it's subtle, man. It's nuances. And so we're very arrogant. And so what happens is these people get given PhD degrees and they're equivalent of somebody learning English from a book in China. And then when we say, like, let's hang out, they're like, hang out? Or, like a lot of the things that we just take for granted. Hang out, what I must let it expose myself? What does that mean?
And see, with him, I know he got in trouble, I think, with the academics too. So he doesn't get much love from them. And I think that kind of helped push him on YouTube and places like the alternative media. So now, he was on the Danny Jones show, and so, and I know even the girl I do shows with, Emily Moyer, had him on her show, and she liked the guy, but she's open to exploring all different things, and especially likes the narratives of the idea that there are drugs that open up parallels dimensions to your mind, which, I mean, that's all well and good, and I'm sure there are things like that, but my thing is, if you're focusing on the translations, they better be right if you're going to cause that much chaos by what you're doing. And I just don't. It doesn't logically make sense to me that they'd be missed by that many people for that long, or that this is, say, we know the Bible's been edited. We know that the Bible is used to control. How the hell would they have ever gotten anyone to believe the words in this book if they were basing it on something that was so obviously evil and wrong that someone would have done in the book? Like, if it was that obvious, no one would have ever, in my opinion, took to it. Because who wants to follow a pedophile? It does. I mean, and also then you have like, I mean, I know this is a fallacy to say like to attack other beliefs one holds, but when the Hillman was praising Fauci for how he handled the whole 2020 thing, and then I was like, all right, I don't know if I trust the logic at all at this point.
Yeah, brother. I
And I mean
actually
no
agree with
I
you.
mean no disrespect to the guy. I'm sure he's a nice guy. But, it's just having trouble with some of that sort of stuff when people bring him up.
I don't mind a bit of disrespect.
Yeah.
Um, no, I
Well, if he's
mean,
lying,
if
he's lying. That's one thing. But I don't know if he's lying. That's the thing. I think he might actually believe it, and then in which case that's fine. That's not what I don't have that belief in.
I think that when people speak in absolutes, then it's on, baby. It's on. Like, he's not saying, well, this could be like this, and this is
Yeah.
one way of interpreting. He's saying that's what it is. And to me, that's a very dangerous place to walk when you're dealing with a text that's 2,000 years old and where the contextual language has been lost for like eons.
Yeah.
And we're just piecing together manuscripts to try and understand what they were talking about. And, even in modern times, you can't even do that with a language. You can learn a few languages like words and language meanings, but when you go to that country, you speak the language. That's when it makes sense. You know how funny it is if you meet somebody who learned to speak a language in school, and they come to your country and they speak in very weird ways and very weird phrases, and you say something and they don't know what you mean. They think you're talking about, no, I don't mean that. I mean this. And we've all been there. I mean, I had French guys and exchange students who was a good friend of mine in school, and exchange students from all over, and it was just funny, their idea of English. We used to giggle at school, because they thought this meant that. No, we're not talking about that. Like, pull your socks up, buddy. And they're kind of looking at their socks. Like, no, that doesn't mean your socks. Pull your socks up means you gotta like you're on a football pitch and he lets somebody get past him. It's like, dude, you gotta pull your socks up. He's like, trying to no. Do you know what I mean? That's something we just take for granted. You wouldn't know that unless you were in the culture. Yeah. So to then assume that I have absolute knowledge based upon an interpretation of ancient texts that we don't actually know much about, we've just guessed and pieced it together as best as we could. And to speak of that as if it's an actual fact means the gloves are off.
Yes, Sherry actually is mentioning, because Gabe's brought him up before, and I think he's like kind of where I am with him. As far as I know, I think he agrees with the way I kind of just presented him, as there might be some truth there, but he's not. There's something off there too.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that, like, I think there's probably a lot of truth in what he says, like my cherry's saying, but it's I could make you a fruit salad, use 5 different fruits.
No, I think what you said,
could be
what you're saying is perfectly, to me, that makes even more sense than the way I was looking at it. Like, because there are so many just ways that we speak to each other that are incomprehensible to people outside of the language.
Yeah. And I like, you make a fruit salad and I could put 5 fruits in it. One of those fruits could be rotten. And you might not know it. And that whole fruit salad, you eat it, it's going to make you sick. 80% of the fruit might be fresh. 90% of the fruit might be fresh. 5% of the fruit might be... I could make you a salad and there could be 2 leaves in the salad that have got salmonella on it. Or E. coli.
Exactly. And actually a really good example of this is what Steiner... Because I looked up the story of the child from the biblical... I don't know why we're on the Bible. We shouldn't even be on it for that long, because it doesn't really relate to even what we were talking about. But I'll finish after this little story from Steiner, where he talks about the child who shows up in the garden when Christ is arrested. And he said he actually completely describes it as no one else could see the child. Like it was like a mirage. Like, which to me, I don't know, I feel like this would be pretty obvious either if they could or couldn't see the child, if it was a mirage, was there, and was not a mirage. And I think Steiner would know. I mean, he wasn't even an English speaker. He's a German speaker. He's closer to the original text as it is.
Yeah, man,
So,
I'm with you. Totally with you. And you know, this is, I think it's a big part of what we're talking about, is how much of our culture is being driven by assumption. And I think it's very interesting because we've been taught to make assumptions. I think all this multiple testing in schools causes a certain degree of what I'm going to metaphorically call brain rot. Now, if you weren't a native English speaker, you would not know what I'm talking about. You would quote me as saying that there's like a part of the brain that's rotten, instead of it's a psychological thing, it's a metaphor. And I think that the ancient Greeks spoke in a lot of metaphor. They were highly creative and poetic people.
And then you will also, and this is a whole other side of this, the whole thing with the Greeks. Oh shit! 1 second, brother. I need to change this battery. Hold on.
Yeah, I think that this is a big part of our culture driving system, is narratives, and that the narratives that we are being trapped in are really like toxic narratives a lot of the time. And the reason they're so toxic is because 90% of what's being told to us is true. It's just that little bit that's wrong. It's like building a skyscraper and everything's built well except for the ground floor, right? The ground floor is really badly built, but all the other floors are perfect. So from a distance, it looks like such a great building until one day it falls over. And everybody's like, but the building was so well built. Yeah, well, the ground floor wasn't. You just need one link in the chain that's dodgy. And that's the big part of the narrative being spun by the dark magicians, and how they're able to actually spin, you know. Are you good there, brother? Ah, yeah, there we go.
Switch out the battery.
Nice.
Thing died. About time. But oh yeah, I was gonna say, so then we have people, and I agree with what you were just saying. But then we also have people like, say, Ronan, for example, who I agree with a lot on too, who will say the Greeks weren't even real. That's not even a real history. That's fake. That's fake history. That history is made up. Which there's so much that's wrong with our history that where do we even begin with some of this stuff? And I guess that also can bring us back to the question of who are the gray men, who are these entities, these beings that influence us from the fringes. Who is actually driving the narrative, the story that we find ourselves in?
And I agree with you. I think that our history has been packaged, as is our present being packaged. And I agree with Ronan up to a point. You know, I do believe that, I think that the ancient Greeks were here.
And I don't want to speak totally for him, because I don't even know if that's, yeah. I feel like he said something along those lines.
No, he's right.
I just don't want to speak for him or anyone, but I know people believe this,
to want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because if there's one piece of rotten lettuce in the salad, you have to throw the whole salad out, right? So yeah, it's a logical path. But I think that what's happened is they've doctored the history. I think they may have added on 1,000 years, concocted 1,000 years, written up. I think, though, that when we go back, here's what I've observed. What we call mythology is history. That's what I've noticed, because there's the same narrative in different parts of the world. In India, the old story is the same as the old Greek stories. The Norse stories are very similar, very, very much the same. Then you look at places like, you know, the Middle East, and you find the same narrative. And then you go to China, and you find there's similar narratives. Then you go across to the Americas, and you find it's the same narrative. So wherever we have the same narrative repeating itself in what we call mythology, I think we've got history. I think all the modern stuff that we call history, a lot of that is doctored, watered down, twisted, changed. I think when we go back to a certain point, they couldn't hide the real history because people were highly educated in the old times. Well, not educated, but highly knowledgeable and learned. And so they couldn't completely take that history away from people because it was ingrained into the consciousness. So they had to change the narrative of the history and say, well, that's mythology.
Yeah, I mean, as we keep moving forward and reality gets stranger and stranger, it does seem like the things that you thought were fake and something of myth and magic are actually the things that are closer to the actual reality we find ourselves in.
And I think this is when we start to get to the little green men. So, like, what is our narrative? Olympus. So Olympus was elsewhere. The gods were on Olympus. They were able to come between Olympus and Earth and then go back there. Some of them.
Mhm.
There was a way to get to Olympus via the underworld. Okay. Or through, there were different ways of connecting up to these places. And then we look at the Norse tradition and we say the same story. Then we look at the Gnostic tradition and the different heavens. We see the same story. Then we go to India and we see the lokas and Tibet. And the different lokas are portrayed as discs where the different lokas or heavens are. And that then the story, the narrative is that the devas and the devis and the asuras all came from those other places to Earth. And then the narrative is they came in vimanas, which were flying ships.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start to notice this is okay, so they also had chariots that could fly through the air in ancient Greek times. Then we look at the Celtic myths. People came from a place called Aria. The Aria.
Mm-hmm.
And then these myths have been shrouded in like the mist of the lake, where there was another mystical land you could travel through the mists, right? But one of the technologies mentioned in the old Celtic myths is the ability to teleport. Very carefully described. So there were two brothers. This is always the narrative. There were two brothers at war.
Always brothers, yeah.
They came from far away, and they were at war, and there were big, terrible wars. And the Celtic myth says that the one had a sword and the one had a spear, and that these weapons were so terrible they had to be hidden away because if these two brothers wielded these weapons, they would destroy the world. Big cities, cultures, right? These are the stories. And the one brother's technology had to do with raising those that had deceased. So the deceased bodies could be taken back and fixed and reanimated, right? That's very interesting. So their soldiers could just be respawned.
Yeah.
Whether that's genetic modification.
Necromancy, as they would say.
Cloning?
Who knows? I
Could
mean,
cloning be the same thing?
Unless there was just a easier way to heal.
I mean, well, once you've left your body, they were able to maybe take the body, put it into a cloning tank and reclone the body. In other words, if you've got genetic modification and you can genetically modify the body and put it into a stasis field so that the consciousness can be brought back into the body.
Yeah, I mean, basically at that point,
but you'd have to change the DNA to be in tune with the consciousness when it was in the body.
Yeah.
Before the DNA started degrading after the consciousness left. So, like, interesting. The other technology was a ship that could travel anywhere on Earth in one heartbeat. So it was teleportation and reanimation of life. So these are the technologies that these two brothers brought according to the Celtic stories. Then we look at the Sumerian story and we've got, Enki and Enlil coming from Nibiru to Earth. Same story. Okay.
Genetic modification with them.
Same story in India. And the Greeks, they came from Olympus, and then what did they do? The giants came into being. The gods created the giants, right? Then we've got the story of
staple, right? The giants in almost every culture, we get a giant type of race.
Yeah, exactly. And this was because of the gods. And we see the same thing in the Semite stories of the Nephilim and the Anakim. And we see the same story in Persia, where they call them the Yaksha. The Yaksha were those beings created by a unity between the divine beings and humanity. And then in India, the devas, some of them became asura because they became enticed by this world. It had to do with the eating of human flesh. This is another story that we find in many cultures in the Americas. And they weren't called yakshas. The creations of these asuras were called rakshas. So they're called rakshas. In there they're called yakshas. There they called the Norse. They were called the giants. And the giants were waging wars with the gods. And so in all of these stories, the gods are fighting against the giants. Some of the gods are good. Some of the gods are bad. Some of the gods are like aligned with the giants. Some of the gods are not. Some of the giants are aligned with the gods. Some of the giants are half-breeds. We find this in the Norse tradition. We find this in the stories of India. We find this in the stories of the Greeks. I mean, how many similarities in myths from different parts of the world do we need to...
Yeah, and I know, I think I just saw Sherry mention Florida. I did see that, I don't know if you've ever watched any of Dr. Longo's videos on Old World Florida on YouTube. He did a presentation last night on all these stories like that, or thousands, I think, of newspaper stories of them finding the bones of giants in Florida. So, I mean,
yeah,
this seems to have been a thing.
There's a really good channel that Ronan's also onto. I think it's called Pelio. I'll link it in my group so you can see it. This guy is the bee's knees. He reads old books from the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, and he just puts the book in front of the camera and he reads it and he pages it, and you can see him reading these books, all the ones he finds like prints of, online, photographs of.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very, and newspaper cuttings, newspapers. And he's basically done a lot of research. It's probably where a lot of Old World Florida is getting the information from. This guy is amazing. He just does so much beautiful research. But like you say, the whole idea that ancient Egypt was concocted to a certain degree, that there seems to be a connection with the Americas, seems obvious. I think what everybody's doing is they're arguing is that no, this was this land. I think we had a global culture in the past, and that global culture had everywhere. This is what in India it speaks about. In India, they say there was the Bharat, and the Bharat was a global culture that spanned the whole world. And everybody was on the same frequency in the Bharat, and there were different languages, but everybody was like connected.
Well,
like today, we've got a global culture.
This is also Edward Casey and Steiner's idea of Atlantis. Basically, it was a global thing that gradually dwindles down to a smaller civilization, then it falls. But then the survivors spread if they weren't already in these places.
Yeah, exactly. That's what to me makes the most sense. And so these beings from other worlds were very much a part of our old history. There's no doubting that it's a unanimous decree throughout all of the ancient cultures, mythologies, or ancient histories, as I like to call them, that there's this fact. And then we look and we go into like more recent times. So these little gray beings that we're so well, that we've heard so much about, right? The ones that are like quite small. There's two different ones. There's a white one, which is a bit taller, and there's a gray one that's a bit smaller. And from what I've heard, and so I can't guarantee this, but I can tell you this. When I've not had any conscious connection with these beings, which is interesting. On the etheric field, I've had conscious connections with other beings. The lizard beings. Okay, so just to backtrack a bit, there within the Sumerian record, there's three records. There's the times, the more modern times from ancient times. Then there's the times before, and then there's the beginning. And these are different chapters that are recited by, that are basically told by Enki to the chief scribe of Eridu. Was it Dumsa? Dumsa, whatever his name is, the scribe, I forget. And but it's like an African sounding name.
I feel like
talking to my girlfriend.
I thought it was Eridu.
Eridu is the place.
Okay,
Eridu is the place, and Dumsa, something like that. He was the chief scribe, and for 40 days and 40 nights, he fasted, or he was given a special bread, which could have been like highly nutritive bread, and water to drink, and then he was dictated to by Enki for 40 days and 40 nights. And he got given the stylus made with a sacred crystal nib. And what's that metal that they used to mention a lot in ancient history? It's like a kind of mercurial metal. And it would write into lapis lazuli. So the original of those tablets were written in lapis lazuli. The ones that we've got that are about 6,000, 7,000 years old, those are clay tablets which were copied from the original lapis lazuli tablets.
Okay.
Just to give us... So when people say that these tablets that we're talking about are like 7,000 years old or whatever, in the beginning of those tablets, it's pointing out how this chief scribe of Eridu actually was given this special pen that could write on stone, that you didn't have to cut it. It would just inscribe with a special kind of crystal. So it was obviously a laser.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna. It sounds like
what
a
he's
laser.
describing is a laser, and basically it was done in lapis. So in the first story, not the first story, I think it's in tablet. Is it tablet number 2, tablet number 3? Of the 14 tablets, which are the oldest tablets of the Sumerian saga, they go into the beginning times, and in the beginning times they speak about, I think this is relevant to what we're talking about here. They speak about An. Now An was the first king of the first hierarchies. This planet was in a state of war, and the war was divided between the north and the south. And An had a relationship with the queen of another planet. And the queen of that planet, her name was Tiamat. And the planet that she was on was a gigantic watery planet with lots of gold in it that was named after her, Tiamat. She had been apparently important in Orion. Somehow Orion's mentioned with her history, a queen or something. There had been great wars, and all the beings that escaped from the Orion sector to come and populate this one planet. The first beings on that planet were a hybrid race, and they were, I think, between 7 and 14 cubits or feet tall, right? Between 10 and 14, 15 feet tall. This is the Sumerians, or the ancient, those who came to Earth. And she had an agreement with them, and they had created another race now of draconian blood, and a hybrid race between draconian and the original hybrid race, which is also a hybrid race that had been the first to settle on that planet. And they created what was called the Igigi. Now the Igigi were about 30 to 35 cubits, 35 feet tall. This was the 200 Igigi that was brought to Mars to work on Mars. They're the ones that built the face on Mars and the pyramids on Mars, which they document being built there. And those beings were of draconian heritage from the Tiamat queen. There had been a great and terrible war between An and Tiamat and obviously Nibiru and that planet, and they had used some kind of incredible technology to affect that planet, and it had broken in half. and broken, and a lot of it had gone off into space. And so the story was that Earth was a residual part of that planet later on, and that planet had changed the whole solar system, and that's why we had the hammered bracelet. The hammered bracelet was a result of that planet's debris field that had been bound in that gravitational field, which was then later on broken by Nibiru crashing through it, which caused the flood on Earth. So they document all of this. But what's interesting is that the heritage of those beings were from Orion. And a lot of the beings that came there were from the Orion quadrant. So it mentions Orion.
This is what's written, at least.
Yeah. So like that's like a really old. Now we look at ancient Egypt, and the pyramids were aligned with Orion's
right?
very important,
Yeah.
right? So it keeps coming up wherever we look. It sort of keeps being mirrored at us, and it's the first constellation I learned as a child. What about you?
Probably Orion, yeah, I'm guessing. Either that or the Big Dipper.
Oh, well, yeah, you're in the north.
Yeah, it might have been the Big Dipper, but now, every night, the first thing I probably can see is Orion with Sirius underneath it.
Yes, Lauren mentions Kingu. Kingu, as far as I know, Kingu was the son of Tiamat, the queen of that planet, before the Great War, before she had been slain, and before the great terrible technologies had broken the planet Tiamat in half. And Kingu was supposed to be the lieutenant of an army that she had built during the great wars between Tiamat and Nibiru, where she had bred a army of warriors that were like 55 cubits tall. And they were like highly draconian. They were like gigantic lizards, dinosaurs, dragons. And these gigantic dragon monsters were used in the war against the Nibiru people, who had a superior technology. They were smaller but had superior technology. So that Kingu is very relevant, Lauren. And that Kingu was her son. She gave the Kingu two things. One thing she gave to Kingu was these celestial tablets, which gave Kingu the ability to know the future by mapping the heavens and be able to have prophecy. And she gave Kingu an abundance of gold mined on Nibiru. And so Kingu went to Tiamat, from Tiamat to Nibiru, and I think Kingu settled on Nibiru after the wars, and their planet had been destroyed. All that gold was there, and they used that gold to fix the atmosphere, because there was a collision that happened between the two planets during this great war that affected not just Tiamat's destruction, but almost destroyed Nibiru, according to those stories. So Nibiru then used that gold that Kingu had brought to fix their atmosphere, but they ran out. They needed more.
It's interesting because...
Yeah?
I was going to say, not to go too far back, but for the character N, they have it listed here, at least as either being a priest or a priestess, but it seems like they say Ishtar basically evolves out of this, because it goes to Inanna, and then Inanna becomes another one, a goddess, and you have Astarte, and Astarte is Ishtar, and Ishtar is then is basically what Easter is named after. And we find this in the Hebrew as like the goddess that they're sort of worshipping at times before they become a patriarchal sort of religion.
Yeah, you're completely right. Inanna was aligned with Marduk, who was the son of Enki in that great war.
Yeah.
And they overthrew the others. And then there was this great and terrible, the great terrible event that they speak about, where there were these poisonous clouds that engulfed the planet and killed all everybody and crops and everything, nothing could grow. There was only a small portion of the world where survivors could escape to and survive. And it took, I think they say it took 80 years before they could repopulate the world. How long was it after Chernobyl that green things were growing and Chernobyl was healthy and they've noticed that people can live there again? I think it's about 80 years. Interesting, huh? They mentioned that specifically. Is it 60 or 80 years? It's something like that. It's mentioned. But anyway, like the point is going back to these beings. It seems like there's, in our ancient legacies, there's this connection with draconian beings that come from Orion, lizard beings. And these giants that were on Earth had a lot of lizard DNA. And why we have dinosaurs on our planet might not be because we had dinosaurs on our planet. Might have been that this was part of a bigger planet somewhere else that got bombarded.
It is strange, right? It is strange. The whole dinosaur narrative is very...
Like, how did they walk? How did they walk?
Well, the way they have...
Because if we recreated them today, they would collapse, right?
Well, we definitely had to have had a different atmosphere and atmospheric pressure and everything. There were different, like the Earth was different at that when in the past. I mean, this
but
could
not
explain,
just a little bit different.
No, very different. Yeah, very
like,
different. And this is talked about in all the occult traditions. I mean, we were under a vapor canopy at one point with the ultraviolet light from, I think, Saturn bathing us at one point, right?
Yeah, there was definitely the story of the vapor canopy, but even the vapor canopy doesn't account for the mass of the dinosaurs.
Yeah, I mean, it would be like I mean, I know gravity is like, it's kind of an incorrect idea the way they present it, but it would be basically this force of gravity was different, that they call gravity at least. Which,
yeah,
I mean, I think it's more like temperature and pressure, and this would allow the mass of the individuals to get bigger. Because I mean, the whole narrative with the dinosaurs, a lot of them just don't like their bodies, the way they're put together, don't make sense, especially coming from a Darwinist model. And it's like, I don't understand how the Darwinists claim like a Tyrannosaurus Rex existed when it would have these little hands like this. Why would evolution, if evolution was acting on these creatures in the way they say, and it's supposed to pick for the best and most efficient sort of like changes in a being, why would it have arms that are of no use?
You're completely right. It doesn't make sense. The narrative doesn't add up, and so I think they've spun a web of history at us in order to explain a phenomenon that can't be explained because it's so ancient that it just doesn't add up. And so we find these footprints that are huge in old volcanic rock. So like
there was definitely
stands
something
to reason.
There was something, but there was definitely something. But I mean, at the same time, if there is not one complete dinosaur fossil that we have, not one. We do not have one that's complete, I don't think. If
Which is a bit weird.
It is very weird.
Very weird. So they've obviously done the best that they can to either reconstruct the dinosaurs in a bad way or directly lie to us, whichever it is.
Well, now they're saying they had
something up.
Now they're saying with, I think the mainstream narrative is now that they had feathers.
Yeah,
which is a huge change from reptile.
What did they had? What
feathers?
Yeah, you see, like, what are they going to sell us next? They were drinking gin and tea, G&T. Well, you know, they had G&T bars on the corners. Every corner had a G&T bar for dinosaurs. They love G&T, but not on the rocks, shaken, not stirred.
I'd be more inclined to believe there were large bird creatures on the planet because of just the occult's whole obsession with the birds and the language of the birds and the bird symbolism in general. Like, that would make actually more sense to me.
It could make a lot of sense, you know. But I think like they're just trying to, they're just trying to keep us in a cage of being trapped in one idea, and not looking that there could be a lot more going on here. You know, like for example, when we start to look at these draconian beings, and we start to look at the myths from ancient past of dragons, and this seems to be a myth in all of the traditions, and then we look at the oldest source, like even the Sumerians, they speak about very specifically where these dragon beings came from and who made them, and that they were part of a war. And then they specifically say that 200 of these Ajiji that the Greeks called Grigori went to settle on Kingu, Mars, and then were brought to Earth, and then they chose woman to give them offspring. Right?
That sounds like the fallen angel narrative.
It's exactly the fallen angel, and in fact, there's 200 of them in the Bible. There's 200 of them in the Sumerian chronicles. There's 200 of them. The ancient Greeks speak about the Grigori. It's the same story.
And then
So-
if we look at how Casey and Steiner describe this, it's not a physical coming to Earth. It's like they reincarnate on Earth, which, I mean, pick whichever way you want to look at it. That could be a total thing. If coming from this etheric astral realm and reincarnating in a body suited for here, that
They actually speak about this, but I think that's at a latest, maybe at a later stage of the history, because once they came to Earth, they had to engineer different bodies, but they were able to live through these bodies.
yeah. See, I think Casey, actually, that's what Casey says. Steiner is more along they all were reincarnated here, and then Casey's more like some came, and then some reincarnate after.
Yes, yes. Some came and set the blueprint, because I think reincarnation works through DNA, bloodline, and ancestral roots. So, like the root had to be put here so that all the others could incarnate here.
Yeah, so there would have
Sort
to
of
be
like-
survivors of whatever happened up there that came here.
Yeah, exactly. And these beings were incredibly powerful. They could project their consciousness, and they could take in a form, like in ancient Egypt and ancient Chem, they speak about this, going for the long sleep under the pyramids in order to take a new body. The story of Hermes Trismegistus is really about this, right? The halls of Imenti. Yeah. So this is really what these guys seem to be talking about. And I agree with you guys in the chat. You know, there's been lies shoveled at us, like shovel loads of lies. It's our job to sort of sift through these lies. So now we get back to these gray beings. Who are these gray beings? I believe that they are biological machines.
I was going to say the same thing. I was literally going to say biological avatars.
Yeah, that have been created by the lizard being race.
I'm even of the opinion that we probably can make them at this point. And I don't know which, like, I'm not saying it's our necessarily governments might not be able to, but there's certainly either an aspect of humanity that's broken away and has technology that they don't let anyone else get to, or black projects that are more like a global type of deal, a group of global psychopaths who have access to this technology, obviously. And
or there's a faction of humans that never lost technology.
Or there's like an ancient race that's been around.
Living under the earth.
Yeah.
Or under the oceans.
Or it could be even surviving artificial intelligence from one of these past civilizations that are just running on
programs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of possibilities in this, and I agree with you that I think that seems like highly probable. Although at the same time, I also think that when the cataclysms came, so they speak about how the Abzu had incredible openings into the inner earth in the Sumerian chronicles, and we see this in all the other stories. Here, where I live in Cape Town, the indigenous San, or the Khoi people, the Khoi San people as we call them, the indigenous Bushmen here they're not around here anymore. There's some left in the Kalahari. They have sand legends about places in Table Mountain that can go under the earth into subterranean places which go other places. There's legends here. And there's legends all over Europe and America.
We're finding all these places too now. There's people on YouTube all over the place, kids who are they're like cave divers basically, and like they're finding just exploring basically underground, under major cities. They're finding these huge. I mean, here in California, in Los Angeles, you have so much underground that it's almost unbelievable. When you see videos of it, you're like, what the hell is going on? Like there's elevators still working to that, like hundreds of feet below the surface that no one's using. Why? They'll say it was because of what was it, Prohibition? They're saying from the time of Prohibition, that's why we get the fuck out of here. Not some maybe, but no one went that deep, built that complex of a structure, put electricity in, put an elevator in. No. Mm-mm. Not for alcohol.
And the simulation theory is coming here. One of the versions of a kind of a simulation theory where Baba Klindley says that the universe was created by an AI system. And we're on the internet right now. I think like there's a lot of truth to that, maybe as a metaphor and maybe as a system. I don't know whether we can term it an AI. You see, we talk about AI computers, right? But then if we apply panpsychism to this, that means that these AIs have souls, which means they are living beings. So then we've got to ask ourselves, did we create them or did we give them an opportunity to incarnate? And I'm not talking about the AIs that we have in modern times that we have. I'm talking about quantum computing.
Yeah, because there is a difference, obviously, between a biological computer, which, I mean, the argument is we are like biological computers in a way, but I mean, we need to be clear that our modern computers were designed based on the human body and human systems and biological life. But biological life can be seen as a system, like an operating system in itself, just a natural operating system. Now, I mean, and you almost see this happen in the biblical texts and all of sort of the texts where there is a apocalypse discussed, where they talk about the flooding of the earth with rivers of metal. I mean, you see that this whole tension between biological life and artificial life made out of, I guess, like metallic stone and building material that's not living in the sense of the word as we know living. Like there seems to be this constant story that keeps happening over and over again of a tension between these two types of entities or beings that's hinted at and discussed. So the system I think we find ourselves in could definitely be a natural biological sort of intelligence that seems like a computer. It's just not using the same materials as we are right now when we're using our computers.
I agree that the word artificial is a jump. It's a leap of faith. Take the artificial out and say an intelligence created this world. Okay.
Yeah.
What that intelligence is it biological? Is it and if we apply the panpsychism to this, then it suddenly starts to become it can make a lot of sense. And like you say, the biological computer is what everything's based upon. So we're just mimicking the biological processes and we're calling it a computer. But what we're forgetting is that the brain is merely a storage device.
Exactly.
So the brain stores our experience of reality and echoes it back at us as a memory. And that's what we are now bound in believing is reality instead of the original experience that was happening prior to the storage in the body.
Yeah.
So, like, I can see how people can say that this world seems artificial because it is a recreation of memory within the biological computers of the body, storing all of the processed information that's reprocessed by the thalamus before the parietal lobes get hold of it to concoct the dream of reality. And so it seems like it's an artificial process, but I would take the word artificial out and just say it's a process.
Yeah.
And then we're like playing in the freedom of potentials, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And I think that this is where people are going to get tripped up, because this is where the transhumanist types are going to say, well, no, they're the same. They're the same thing. Where like, just go deeper into matter. And that might be honestly where panpsychism might be an issue, if they try to claim like, well, if everything is an aspect of the one, then this metal box is an aspect of the one, and why not put your consciousness in there? But I think there's something in us that tells us not to do that.
I think the reason the scientists are dizzy and confused about panpsychism is because they don't understand the roots of panpsychism, and so they're using panpsychism to explain something back to front. So I think many of the scientists are trying to equate and say, well, because it's a physical object, it has a soul.
And they do everything back to front, everything.
Yeah,
man. It's like
instead of saying that because there's a soul, there's a physical object.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. I mean,
no, because there's this object, there must be a consciousness. So this object being created creates a consciousness. No, there is a consciousness that then manifests this object from elsewhere.
Bingo.
And this
Bingo.
object is a manifestation of a consciousness field that exists prior to the matter.
Yes. And then this is where you get a problem with saying you want to put your consciousness in a vessel, because that consciousness is imperfect. It is not the original source consciousness, which we would want to be at least closer to in our physical avatar for now. Like, we don't want to go into a lesser body, and that's what's going to happen with the transhumanists. And it seems to happen every single time they try this sort of thing, and then they destroy themselves and have to restart everything.
Okay, so here's an interesting story that I heard, and I'll just recount the story. I'm not going to quote it as valid, as truth, but it made me think. This came from Summer Scales, and what was Summer Scales' partner's name? I forget. Not Bill Cassidy, that's from Camelot. Joanna Summerscales and the Amash movement, they interviewed people, and one of the people, or was it Bill Cassidy and the Amash project? One of these two, like, we're talking about 25 years ago, 20 something years, 22 years, whatever, many years ago that I came across this, maybe about 20 years, say, close to. So basically there was a guy that had been interviewed that claimed that he had worked on secret projects. He was an engineer, and that there was extraterrestrial beings, and that there was Project Looking Glass.
Okay, I know you're talking about. I think I know the exact interview.
So you know.
Was it it was the woman though, right? Her last name is Cassidy, right? But the blonde woman, what the hell's her first name?
Yeah, I think it's Bill Cassidy is the guy, and the woman's name was
Carol Cassidy, or no?
I forget.
Someone tell us her name from the Basis Project or whatever the hell she's in.
The Basis was
Camelot.
Joanna Summerscales.
Project Camelot, right?
Project Camelot. The early Project Camelot.
Carrie Cassidy. Just
It
remembered it.
is Kerry. Kerry.
Okay. Just remember.
Yes, Kerry. Duh. How
And
could I forget her name? Kerry
Neil
and
remembered
Bill.
too.
And Bill always wore this funky hat.
See, I don't know if I ever saw Bill. I know I saw videos with Kerry in it, and I think I know this video I think you're about to bring up is one with the supposed soldier who said we had looking glass, and they were like these cubic devices that would tell potential futures. Yeah.
There've been a lot of people who claim to have been part of these programs. Thank you, Neil. Um, and Big Gaz is talking about flying through wormholes, and there's something to these wormholes, on the consciousness field. But back to the Kerry Cassidy story. So there were a number of people, but one of the guys who was an engineer, and there were soldiers, there were different people interviewed, similar story, same story, said that these beings came from different timelines in our future.
Yeah.
And that there were different beings coming here, and that the different beings coming here looked different, and that they had basically screwed themselves up because transhumanism.
I was gonna say, I mean, if you really think about it, it could be like if, say, they could figure out time travel in the future, which, I mean, what is time? Is there even time? That's the thing we'd have to deal with in itself. But let's say there is in the physical plane, there is a direction of time we go in, we go down the transhumanist route. What do you think would happen? We'd lose our ability to reproduce. We'd probably lose or we'd lose our muscle mass. We'd become little skinny freaks, which you can look at and see some of the more technocratic types, like I look at Bill Gates. And then what would happen? You'd probably want to go back and figure it out, and then that would kind of explain the people who say they're abducted and they have all these sexual things that are happening to them, because they'd want to figure out how the hell they get that back, how the hell they can fix that in themselves so they can learn how to reproduce again and become what they used to be. It's a possibility.
That's basically the story that you've said, basically. And that there was he speaks about these P42s, these P28s, this, and he says there's some that are 28,000 years down one timeline, there's others that are 50,000 years down another timeline, 46,000, and these different groups are coming here to try and salvage and fix where they screwed up. And it's like a very interesting concept. And then, of course, the looking glass technology, which has been spoken about a lot, which is to do with basically scrying,
Yeah.
the future, the past. So, this sort of, these are things that seem very far-fetched, but I think there might be more to these stories than what we can necessarily just shake a stick at. So I do say that, like, there's probably some truth to that when it comes to the gray men. Then there's the lizard beings. Now, have you had any experiences with the lizards?
No. And I've always been very skeptical of this. So this is something you might have to convince me of a little bit. Of not on the like more like ethereal type of realm, but in the physical, I've been skeptical of I mean, I feel like people act like reptilians because of the place in their mind that they're in, and maybe I'm more inclined to believe there's like an ancient culture that may have survived that operates in this way and may have become uglier to our standards, and because of just how they have survived. But I mean, at the same time, it's kind of hard to put then advanced tech with a civilization like that. You would think that they wouldn't be such hideous creatures. So I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, there's so many stories out there, and I can't like speak to the validity of the stories, like true or false. But I've had experiences with these lizard beings. I've had a lot of clients with these lizard beings.
In the physical or astral or
astral.
Astral. See that? Okay, so I can get on board with that, because I've heard enough, even with the occultists who have written about their astral projection stories, who they all seem to come into contact with these types of entities.
well, even in the etheric
Yeah, and
as
the etheric
well.
as well. Yeah.
And I've experienced these beings with people where they're also seeing these beings, and you can scry these beings using like a crystal ball or something. Yeah. And
I know what you're talking about. There's a way to do it
and
too. I think using like just water
exactly, or a
mirror,
probably
even
use
like
a
a
handset.
reflection. Yeah.
Could probably use a handset.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I'd want to use a handset, but you could probably. But and if you looked at them, you can see they've got physical bodies when you look at them, when you scry them, and they seem to be somewhere else, which to them feels physical, but when they come to us, they've got these suits that they wear, and the suits are like, I call them armor, but they've got like rank in their suits, and depending on the suit they're wearing, you can tell their rank. And like when the big honcho comes, he's got all these extra gadgets on his suit, and I think that these are suits that they literally put their bodies into, or that they have been built into their bodies transhumanistic. I don't know which is which, and they're able to use this augmentation to transport their consciousness here, and they prey on fear. The lizard beings, my experience, they prey on fear. So people that don't have a fear program don't have to deal with them.
Yeah.
If you're experiencing a fear, then that's when they come. And I had an ex that used to have a fear program, and so she used to struggle with him, and they wanted to abduct her, and so I'd have to, sometimes be with her and intervene. And then there was groups of people that also had an unconscious fear program, and they were able to come to us during a time and literally like try and break through into our space, not necessarily physically, but like into the minds of the people around. And so like I've had like quite a lot of experience with those beings. I'm not really I don't really think very much of them, because I've had experiences with lots of other beings. I've had experiences with ant beings, which like seem to come from inside the earth. Then I've had experience with tall. Okay, now there's these other ones that when I see them, they look like Greek gods. Beautiful. There's something about them. They're so beautiful. They're the most beautiful human beings you've ever seen, and they're huge. And their technology is superior. They don't have any augmentations or any suits. They just sit on a throne. But the throne's got like little things they can control. There's technology. A special kind of a technological throne. Maybe they're sitting in the throne of their craft, which has got like a whole lot of...
Has this been more physical, these?
No, also on the astral field. But these beings, look, the lizard beings, they have to be careful with us, because we're actually very strong, and we can actually we can go beyond resisting them. Yeah, we can actually interfere with them. We can cause trouble with them. They can become afraid of us. But these other beings, these human beings, they're on another level. Like, we can just become aware of them, but we can't lock them in place. We can't study them. We can't manipulate the field around them, which we can with these other beings. Those beings are like another level. They are like watching us from a distance. And if we become aware of them, they just phase out of existence. And you can't find them. You can search for them everywhere. You can't find them. The lizard beings, their technology leaves a trace. You can follow them, right? These beings, something else. They're like another level. So, and these are just some of the beings, And then there's like other energetic beings, small beings, who I knew when I was young from Pleiades that were like a part of my life for maybe about a year. Year and a half. I got a lot of information from them. They worked with me. They
Again on
connected
the
me.
again on astral.
Yeah. Yeah. That was in the 90s and like the mid 90s. Then they connected me to other human beings that were in the flesh. I thought I was using the earth as a lens to travel, because they taught me, these beings, to fall out of my body spinning backwards when I was in bed. And so I would go into this deep relaxation and I would feel myself falling.
Okay.
And I'd be spinning as I was falling backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be spinning. And then something happened.
Sounds like the
fall. And I was falling forwards.
Sounds like the fallout. Like there is a fallout method for astral projection where like I think you roll out of you pretend that you're rolling, or like you picture yourself rolling out of your body apparently, and this is how people can sometimes get out of body. So it sounds similar to that.
Yeah. You can step out of your body. You can walk out of your body.
Yeah.
You can fall out of your body. You can jump out of your body.
Right? I mean, I don't think I've one time been, I think, in partially out of, I don't know. I think it's like when you're seeing things in black and white, kind of, and you could see around the room that you are in as you're in bed.
That's the etheric field.
That's about as far as I've ever gotten with that. But the one thing
that's etheric projection. You can travel around the world in that body.
The one thing I was always good at prior to that was I would be able to lucid dream almost every single night until I got to college, and then when I got to college, my dreams all stopped. They stopped. I went black for years.
Did you discover weed?
No, I have no idea what happened. I have no idea what happened. Nope.
Partying?
I stopped drinking. I stopped drinking because I got
lean, mean sex machine.
So one thing did happen my sophomore year of college. I got an H. pylori bacteria infection somehow, where it causes ulcers, and you have to they give you a bunch of antibiotics to try to get rid of it. And when you get rid of it, it's supposed to be gone. But ever since then, it was like when that happened, dreams stopped, and also now I never drunk any alcohol ever again after that, because I still have a sensitive. I've never been totally right since that happened with my stomach. And when it first happened, it felt like I was like someone was inside of me with a razor blade, peeling my stomach. Yeah, it was just pain. Pain. It was just pain. That's all it was.
Wow, sorry to hear that, dude. It doesn't sound like fun.
Yeah, I guess the only good thing that came out of it was that I haven't had any alcohols, and I think maybe I drank a very little bit my freshman year of college, and that was it. And then I never drank alcohol again after that happened.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like my boy keeps asking me to buy an ale so he can have some. I'm like, dude, you're 8. He says, yeah, but your dad let you have a little sip of ale when you were 8. I was like, my dad used to give me a little shot glass of ale,
Yeah.
When I was a little boy. And I remember how his wife used to say, you can't give this kid alcohol. He said, oh, just a little bit. It's good for him. And he was right. It was good for me.
Yeah, it's normal in a lot of cultures. I mean, I remember before I had that thing with my stomach, I could drink almost as much as I want. I didn't drink a lot, though. I never was that type of person, because I like being in control of myself, especially. But I never had a hangover, never had pain, never anything. And then this happened, and I was just like, alcohol is the worst thing in the world for you. If I felt like it was killing me every time I had it. But it's very strange, because when I got that bacteria, the doctors were like, where did you go out of country? I didn't. So they were like, how did you get this bacteria? Because you usually get it. This is like the thing you can get if you drink water in Mexico, they say.
So did you ever have abduction dreams?
No. I never had any sort of. I've had a lot of, like I said, I would lucid dream all the time when I was younger. Totally aware that I was dreaming. The way I woke up was closing my eyes in my dream, and I would wake up. And then the lucid dream stopped. Almost all my dreams stopped when this happened. And then just about 2 years ago, 2021, 3 years ago now, well, 4 years ago, like 2021, 2022-ish, I had a weird experience where my first bout of sleep paralysis where a shadow person, kind of shadow entity, came out of my wall. And I mean, I'm well aware of like the research saying it's hypnagogic hallucinations, and
Yeah.
it's not.
Did it
and
have red
so-
eyes or not?
No eyes, and like I'm happy that I actually had watched so many documentaries on just the whole phenomenon that is sleep paralysis, and knew both sides of the story, because I had heard from so many people who went through this that, you know, fear makes it worse. And I also knew like there was at least some sort of scientific explanation that if I wanted to, I could go to that and be like, oh, it's just a hallucination. So like part of me was like, I'm not buying the hallucination aspect, but I just know that if I'm afraid of what's going on right now, it's not going to end. So I just got really like angry, kind of like, get the fuck out of my room. And eventually I was able to kick at it and it was gone. And I was able to move, but it was weird. And I was getting, they were,
And it was just a humanoid shadow.
it was a feminine looking humanoid shadow that had straggly hair, because it came out from at the time I had a bed that was against the wall in my old apartment. And there was a window right at the edge of my bed. And then the wall to the other apartment was right up, my bed was against it. So out from that wall, it came across the window, and then it came like my desk that I have here was next to my bed, and it came in between my bed and the desk, and it starts like reaching for my face, but I'm also at the same time feeling like a deep pressure on my chest, and my eyes are wide open the whole time. And then eventually I was able to kick it. At just nothing. Once I kicked and I was able to move again, there was nothing there.
Yeah, I've actually had lots of experience with the jinn, and you get some with red eyes, but they tend to avoid. Like I was always curious with them. I was like, yeah, mate, I'm gonna catch you. I'm gonna stick you in a crystal. You better watch out, buddy. I'm gonna catch you. I'm gonna bind your shit to this object. Dude, you're gonna be bound to this object. Dude. You're gonna be my bitch.
There was a second experience I had that I feel like it was connected, and I mean, because my intuition says it was, I think that it was, and then after this, it never happened again. But it was, this time I was actually asleep, and in my dream, I'm with my girlfriend in my dream, and I'm like, oh, Maggie, look up on the rooftops of these buildings. Look, there's a witch. She's jumping around. Like, it was a creepy woman who was like jumping around on the roof, and my girlfriend walks away in the dream, and all of a sudden the woman jumps off the roof like a freaking, almost like a animal in a way, like unnaturally, and lands like perched next to me. And all of a sudden I can't move. I'm like in sleep paralysis, and I'm lucid in my dream, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? I can't move, and I could see this time I see whatever the hell it is. Like I could kind of make out that she's wearing what the clothes she has on, which is like, just, you know, like the typical robe. But this was a white robe, a dirty white robe, and she had her hair over her face, kind of like the Ring. So I couldn't really see her face, but she looked kind of like she was partially dead. And I remember I couldn't move, and I realized I was dreaming. I'm like, all right, time to get out of the dream. Couldn't wake up either, so then I was like, all right, fuck it, I'm just gonna try to attack this thing and jump at it. And then I wake up jumping out of my bed towards the same spot where the previous entity was when I had the sleep paralysis episode. As I wake up as I'm hitting the wood floor in between my bed and the desk. And there was only about a foot and a half of space at the time, because I was living in a studio apartment with like a half of a room that was my bedroom. So there was like this much space for me to land in next to my bed where someone could actually stand. And that's where I landed. and I just like hit my hip, and I was like, "Fuck! God damn it! Why did I just jump out of my bed from my sleep?" And then it never happened again after that. Are you muted right now? I think. You're muted, Franklin.
Sorry. I was saying that sounds like a traumatic kind of out of the body experience that you come back with like gifts, like a shiner and like a scar, you know?
Luckily, I landed right on my side, so it wasn't bad, but it was weird. I was like, what the hell? That's like a weird mix of a sleep paralysis, shadow kind of person experience and a lucid dream at the same time. It was odd.
So those shadowy beings are the jinn. And they're described like after I experienced them. So I have been to places where there's a junction. I know where there's junctions. Like I could do tours if I wanted to. I could be a tour guide. Because I know places on the mountain in Cape Table Mountain where you can go at the foot of the mountain and there's like the membrane's thin. And you can go and watch them, like sightseeing.
It's interesting you say that because where I was living was at the foot of a mountain in Burbank, California, right across from like this Warner Brothers Studios. And I would always film stuff on this mountain too that showed like weird activity that I think I've shown you actually a plasma, like a little ball of plasma. I don't know, was it you that I showed that to? That came out that you could see flying over the mountain, and it was weird. It was just like an orb. Like there was a bunch of weird stuff that would happen over on that mountain that shouldn't have been happening. And my apartment was right at the foot of it. So that's interesting you say that.
Yeah, there are places like that where there will be landmarks on the mountain, by the way.
There was a place in that mountain called it was called something weird, like a death something very dark and demonic for some reason.
Yeah. So we've got a Rhodes Memorial. We've got a Rhodes Memorial, Cecil John Rhodes University Memorial, close to where this place is, where the membrane's thin.
Oh, and then I mean that huge cemetery too is on the same mountain. It's right down the road. The Forest Lawn Cemetery with all the celebrities in it, where they say like Michael Jackson they have his body there. They have all the celebrities there. So that's on the same mountain. Yeah.
So those people know things. They know where to put ley lines on energy points, and this is where. So like there's been places where I found roads that are going into a busy settlement in their world, and you can see them traveling to and fro, commuting. And they're like all on a mission. They're all going to like their jobs and stuff, and you can watch them. And I've been with a group of people, like 8, 9 of us, and we're watching them. People are like, these shadows are walking around. Like, what the hell? We're not moving. We're stationary. These shadows are walking around. People freaking out. I'm like giggling. I'm like, yeah, dude, like just watch the show, dude. Just watch them. Watch what they're up to. But so these jinn are the follower of Shaitan, is their king in the Quran. And Shaitan is Satan, where we get our word Satan from, the adversary. And there was a pact between the jinn and those beings that were overthrown that came to this world when they were put into the 8th sphere.
Tell me more.
I don't know the full I can't know the full truth of it, but there's these stories about how I think I breached on it in the last story, how it depends which stories you go as to who it is, whether it's Gabriel, Michael, Raphael, and Ariel, or whether it's Shemiyaza, but anyway, a group of people combining giants and humans overthrew these other beings, and they were put into an etheric prison, and they had made a deal with Shaitan and the jinn and joined the ranks, and so they've got their. So this is where like the whole idea of Satan and good and evil comes from. It's got to do with like a branch of these beings that are jealous of humans. And from the Arabic perspective, the jinn were jealous of humans, but they're not all bad.
Yeah, they're not supposed to be
But
out. And so you're saying also there was another group of entities who made a deal with the jinn to be in this eighth sphere. So what I could have been doing with might not have even been a jinn, because it didn't seem like it. It seemed like I was saying, I kept saying witch in my dream. Like it was like a weird. It was like almost like a succubus type of energy.
could be. I've known people to be pinned down to their beds by these beings. I've
Well, that's
known
right.
women almost to be physically assaulted in a sexual way.
The first time it happened, I was just having pressure on my chest, like really hard pressure, and then I was about to, I feel like, get my face slammed into my bed. That's what it felt like was about to happen. But this is one thing that I did have from my younger dreams when I was lucid. Sometimes I would encounter in the more, I guess if I would consider them usually like the more nightmare type lucid dreams. There was an entity that was usually a feminine. It was like a witch. I always thought it was like a witch. I always had a thing where with like a woman in a black dress was kind of scary to me, probably from watching Are You Afraid of the Dark? But I'd wake up sometimes after my face in the dream was grabbed and slammed, and I feel like my face was slammed in real life into the bed, but like almost into something hard. And I'd have like a little bit of an ache in my face, like someone actually just grabbed me. And I'm like, what the hell is that about? Like it happened a few times when I was younger, but it was just interesting that that's how it would kind of manifested when I had the first experience. I was wide awake. I was awake.
Yeah, so I've known people to have this experience with the jinn, where they can't
Yeah.
breathe and they're pinned down so badly that they can't breathe. They're
No,
afraid.
I could breathe, but that's probably because I was staying calm.
Yeah. Then the lizard beings use fear tactics and how would I describe this without getting our show axed? Sexual congress without permission. And in a fearful way.
And I should say,
And that's part of the possession trip, huh?
and I should say, when I say succubus, there wasn't actually any sexual feeling to what was going on. It was more like just something fucking with me. There wasn't any like, I wasn't worried about something getting on top of me and trying to get inside of me. It felt like more like they were trying to hurt me. But like they couldn't hurt me because they knew that they needed like my permission to do so, and I wasn't gonna give them that. So it was almost more like like you're saying, but like a possession type of, like a disincarnate spirit, almost like that. It was odd.
So like these beings are out there. A lot of people experience them. People are generally too scared to talk about them. So the truth is that there are so many more experiences than are documented because people don't want to be labeled as a kook.
Yeah.
So they're actually much more common. And when you actually speak to people, they will acknowledge, like, okay, this has happened more often than not. And they won't really talk about it. I know quite a lot of people that won't talk about it. But they've spoken to me about it because they've literally been afraid, you know.
Yeah. Same. Same.
Gonna hurt me, you know. And like when I moved into this house, there were certain entities embedded in the history of this house. We still got a ghost room up on the other side of the top upstairs. It's a storeroom, and like she's an old lady. She hangs out there. It's like, okay, it's her space. It's all good. We don't use upstairs because upstairs isn't really very good. There's just one part of upstairs that we use. There's a storeroom up top here, and then there's a huge school where my son's got it like a schoolroom. But otherwise, like this is a huge house. There's 3 downstairs. Upstairs needs to be fixed. The floors aren't very good, so like the main part, which is beautiful, like big windows facing the sea, is my son's school, which is like perfect. You can't put big furniture in there, but you don't need to for a little school. It's carpeted and it's sweet. But we've got one there. There was another baleful presence on my stairwell here. Someone had taken a tumble and they were resentful. And so they had entities that were related to that. Someone had obviously, you know, clocked out on the stairwell.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had to remove certain, like, extract memories from the space, and let them go. When we moved into this house, and the people before us who lived in this house couldn't live here because of this presence, and so it's one of the reasons I got a cheap rate on this house. They were like, we came here, that the owner and her son didn't want to say anything, and like I was right off the ball. By the way, you do realize what's going on upstairs, and they were like, yeah, the people who lived here before. It's not a problem for us. Like, in fact, I'm game with this. This is my kind of place. Like, I know I belong here if there's that. So there's a lot of this around, where there's presences in people's homes, presences in, and it's so common. Just the people that is happening to won't talk to other people. They'll come to someone like me, and they won't talk to other people about it. Wow, I would never tell my sister,
Well, there's also too a lot of people who seem to be dealing with what's more like a weaponized RF frequencies that are being blasted into their home and causing similar effects, like to where they're hearing voices that are there, but usually they're not, like the kind of voice of God type of weapons. And look out for Charlie talks about this a lot. This is something that I think actually one of my buddies might have been dealing with. He was very accomplished marksman when he was in military academy, drops out, but he's like a specimen of nature. This guy's huge, insanely strong, but he lives right on Lake Geneva, and he has videos of just these high-pitched sounds blasting on and off in his house. And it's the same type of stuff that, like, when Charlie from Look Out for Charlie on YouTube analyzes his videos, he can pull out these like sine wave speech patterns that are part of this weaponized system that seems to be everywhere as well, and can mimic the paranormal, can mimic a god. This is what they used in Afghanistan when they were having Allah speak in the head of the combatants and getting them to just give up their weapons. So there's a lot of also like trickery and foolery, because then you could also blast someone with like an ultra low frequency or a high frequency, make things move, make sounds happen in the house, and they don't know what the hell is going on. They think their house haunted.
I had this happening in my home in Croydon.
I think we talked about this once, I think, right? This is when you were involved with the what was it, some of the protesting movements,
It was
right?
after. Yeah. And what I didn't mention was we used to run outside and look for UFOs above the house.
It's interesting.
Because sometimes there'd be these sounds. And I'm talking about like sounds like that.
That's like the sounds that were happening in my buddy's house and being picked up on. It's like he's hearing it. I'm seeing videos of him running around. So I was like, what? Like on a security camera, loud as fuck. And I'm like,
loud. The shit wakes you up at night.
I'm like, dude, what is that? Is that your fire alarm? He's like, I don't have fire alarms in the house. It's under construction. There's no fire alarms anywhere. I'm like, so where is that?
I figured out what it was.
So you found
it was the frequencies of aluminium.
Yeah, and it's very hard to convince people that it's not something paranormal or weird, because I told my buddy that I don't think he's dealing with paranormal. I think he's dealing with, there's a base literally right across the street from you at the fucking lake. I told him.
I think it is paranormal and it's not paranormal, because it's like what we consider the normal laws of physics. No, it's that other paranormal physics, like which we don't know about because our schools teach us normal physics, but there's paranormal physics, which is real physics. And so we had this sound happening a lot, and I noticed the sound was coming out of the ceiling. It seemed louder. So obviously, me being me, I open the ceiling, I go up in there. I go up in there in the dark, I want to figure out what's going on. It was aluminium that was vibrating. The aluminium would vibrate at that particular pitch, and I noticed that's very interesting.
Yeah.
And so then my supposition to my ex was it might be the propulsion system of a extraterrestrial vehicle above our property. That's what my common sense said to me. If there's one of those crafts above you, they have like a magnetic gravitational field, electrical field, and if the vibrational pitch is the same as aluminium. Now, aluminium has got a very interesting high electrical potential. Yeah. So it would stand to reason that aluminium might be pitched at that vibrational frequency.
That's a possibility. It's a possibility.
Yeah. Well, that was what my logic told me. So when we heard these sounds, I'd run outside and look above the house, and invariably there'd be a weird cloud above the house. I'd be like, above this house, why is it like, where's the rest of them?
Were you near a
And
base?
we'd be like, I wonder what's in that cloud. You know?
Were you near a military base?
Sorry.
Were you near a military base at all, or no?
No, we weren't. Not an above ground one. We had noticed that there were anomalies in South London and Croydon, and I reckon there was an underground system.
Because it's interesting you mentioned the cloud, because one of the stealth sort of technologies, some of these craft that we have as military craft use, the way they do it is they form a cloud around the vehicle, and then they obviously have the paint that it's like a whole, there's tons of advanced stuff that they're using now, but part of it is like artificial clouds that they'll use and they'll fly in. And I have a video of one of these actually.
This started happening after I met this guy in a park. Remember, did I tell you about him? Yeah. And he had implants and stuff in his body.
Oh no, you didn't tell me about him.
So I met this guy in a park. We take our dog to walk, and like a lot of people sitting down in Croydon Park chilling. And I walk up to this dude and I sit down next to him. I'm saying, dude, I'm going to say something to you now, and I'm going to be open with you.
Wait, maybe you did
like,
tell me.
What is going on with you? Do you have like extraterrestrials communicating with you, or what is going on with you? Because I'm trying to figure out what's going on with you. And this guy freaked out and he ran away. Literally got up and ran away. He was like, are you one of them? Are you one of them? And he ran away. So I saw him again, like a few weeks later in the same park. We used to walk there. And I said, dude, he goes, no, dude, stay away from me. I said, let me explain to you. I've got certain clairvoyant abilities, and I'm a shaman, and this is what I do for a living, and I can just pick up that there's something going on around you that I don't understand. I just wanted to understand what's going on with you.
Yeah.
And he was like, are you sure you're not one of them? And I was like, dude, I give you my word. You can see who I am. Like, come to my home. So he came to my home. He saw, okay, you literally are this dude. You live here in Croydon. You're here with your girlfriend and your dog. I was like, he took me to his home and he showed me all the paperwork. I was like, wow. So first there was the freedom of information requests from the MOD about him, all blacked out, national security, most of it. Then there was the hospital reports, the ultrasound reports, the x-ray reports, the write-up by the doctor that the x-ray machine had malfunctioned because of the technology in his body. All certificates, like proper. And I worked for a time with the NHS, so I know what proper NHS documents look like, because I used to care for disabled people. I used to have to look after bloody files and have document files from the NHS and keep them together and make sure that the paperwork's up to date, because I'm coming to visit this person. I've got to write in their file. They had their medicine, they had a poo, they had a pee, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I was like, okay, this is interesting. Then he showed me court documents. I was like, holy crap. Because I'd done activism, I knew what a court seal looked like. You can tell the difference between real court documents and non-real court because there's a court seal on it. And then he showed me other documents of like apologies for why there had been errors made from the NHS. They had put him into a loony bin on the basis that he had set himself, or that he had threatened to set himself on fire in public.
Then when he took them to court from within the loony bin, got a lawyer. The lawyer took them, they said, the judge said, so where's the witness? They were like, we don't know what happened. We don't have a witness on file. The court was like, how can you put this guy in a loony bin based on the fact that he threatened to do this and you don't have a witness? Case thrown out of court. And so they had to apologize to him. They sent him money. Without him even applying for it, they gave him a grant. So he never has to work. He just gets money given to him from the government. And then he went to the NHS hospital to try and have it removed. And he had documents from them saying, sorry, we can't operate on this because this is MOD, proprietary technology.
So
we're not allowed to interfere with it. You have to go to the MOD. Then there was paperwork from the MOD. And he had this huge folder. And
So
I
it
was
was
like,
mil- it was mil-
sound
it was-
reports,
it was
X-ray
military.
reports, doctors' writs, legal documents. Like, I was like, holy crap. And then he told me the story. He said, you have to see this before I tell you the story, otherwise you won't believe me. I got people in my head talking to me. Now, the particular implants that he had were ocular implants. They are put into people for hearing. And they were developed in the same base where my girlfriend was
Wow.
born. My
I've
girlfriend was
heard-
born in the same base. And I said to her, there's something connecting you to this guy. I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm going to figure it out. So I did research into this guy. He was in the Falkland Islands. He had been in an accident in the Falkland Islands. He had been shipped back to the Germany where there was a base. The base was MOD, Air Force, and the Army. 3 divisions, or not Army, Air Force, MOD, and one other division, right, of the UK military.
Mhm.
And the one had the space, managed, the one had the space, the other managed what was happening there, and the other one had so there was no accountability. If he went to the MOD, they said you must go to the Air Force. If he went to the Air Force, so he had all these documents from the Air Force and the MOD saying, the Air Force saying you need to speak to the MOD, the MOD saying you need to speak to the Air Force. And so he couldn't make out what had been done to him in this base. But this base was where my ex, which we then pieced together the puzzle, and it was synchronicity. It was like, wow. So I approached this guy in the park. It turns out he was born in the same base he was operated on in the same base where you were born. She came from a military family. All the people in her family were military. Her father had
happens a
done
lot.
things that nobody should do to anybody, right?
This happens a
So
lot.
there's this pattern in these families. She came from one of these families. She had incredible psychic abilities. And she was an artist, sacred geometry artist. She was a musician. She was a philosopher. She used to win the High Stedfords when she was young. She was a pianist, and she was a music composer and a music, what do you call it? She had studied in the university music production, all of
Okay.
the technical stuff as well. So she was really interesting, artistically. And she was a poet as well. So she was very creative. But we pieced together this connection. So this guy basically had these people talking to him in his head. And he said to me, I believe it's people in an office somewhere here in London. I was like, what? He said, yeah, because they change shifts. And there's different people that talk to me. And there's a pattern to who's talking to me. And I'm like, oh, it's you on shift again. And so he had basically been writing his own notes about what he's experienced, and he wanted this stuff removed. So I put him in contact with Joanna Summerscales, who I knew. I phoned her the one day. I said, listen, Joanna, there's this guy who's completely legit. He's got the documents. I met him in a park. He didn't approach me. I was drawn to him. I approached him about this.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. And it turns out this guy's trying to get help for funding to go and have an operation outside of the UK because they're not allowed to touch the technology. The NHS, none of the doctors in the UK will touch this. He was trying to find people to remove the technology from his body because it was causing him pain and suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So after I put him in touch with Joanna Summerscales, all the stuff started. One night I woke up and I had 3 holes in the form of a triangle on my shoulder, on my arm. And the reason I had these 3 holes was because my ex woke up and she said to me, I was having this weird dreams that there were these men in black in here and that they were doing stuff to us. And I was like, I feel really groggy this morning. And she said they did something to us. And these 3 holes were like, I studied my body and I looked at these 3 holes. They were tiny little holes, an exact triangle. I measured it with a ruler, exact triangle. So I was like, very interesting. You know, I don't know if that was true or what.
Oh, it sounds all like if someone got pissed off that you interfered with something they were doing. And now it seems like the system is so advanced they don't even need people in a office talking to anyone anymore. They have AIs that can talk to people and just keep repeating if they're sensitive enough to it, or they have an implant, or they have some sort of. I mean, I heard a similar story to what you just told about it from Sabrina Wallace was, I think, discussing this. I think it was Sabrina Wallace. It might have been Charlie too, where the guy had just gotten a pair of hearing aids, regular hearing aids, and before he had the hearing aids, never heard a voice in his life. After he had the hearing aids, diagnosed with schizophrenia. But it was coming through the hearing aids, but people are just so I think he might have figured it out eventually, and he stopped using the hearing aids. But some people aren't gonna ever think that way. They're just gonna think, yeah, they have schizophrenia, and they're gonna medicate themselves and deal with it, especially at that age when you're older. But this technology, I think, is what they showed us in The Dark Knight, the one with the Joker, when you have Batman monitoring everyone on all the screens through their communication devices on their phone, is able to map out the entire city in with using infrasound in a way based on the communications people are having. And it's it makes an image, but the image is kind of it's not like a perfect representation. It's made out of shapes that are in this green sort of VR type of look to it. It's because it's bouncing, the infrasound is bouncing off the objects, and that's giving you a general outline of what you're seeing, and then that's giving a feedback to the main computer, and somehow they're bouncing back signals now that are in either above and below the human hearing range, which I'm guessing they're using the higher frequencies from 5G and the lower frequencies from the older generation of technology, and through the 2 frequencies they're able to make sine wave speech. Now, I don't know how the hell they're getting so much feedback from these devices and able to record and then have them speak in real time to the people who they're messing with. That to me is that's a lot. I don't know how they do it, but I've seen examples of this exposed by Charlie as him on his channel, where he's recorded people who seem like they're talking to nothing. He boosts up the sound, and then you could hear these voices that are clearly computer generated just saying negative shit to them.
I can believe this,
And now imagine what happens when they have 6th generation technology around all of us, and people start having this stuff happening in their home. We see, I think recently, Gabe was talking about Mr. MB333, and how he keeps posting all the lights flashing, all the power grids are flashing in a bunch of cities. Whether or not that's people just looking for that and they're seeing it more. I mean, it was weird because the other day he got a video of a whole city, a city line from someone on a plane that was blinking in and out. So that's something serious that shouldn't be happening. But Charlie has even documented this before, where you don't really see this with the LED lights now that we all have. But if you use the old light bulbs, you see that the grid is unstable. It's pulsing. And this pulsed electricity we have going through our grid creates a lot of these effects too. So they can cause a lot of chaos with this sort of technology.
I've noticed this because my light bulbs don't last. I buy filament light bulbs.
I have one here. This is a fake one. I think I thought it was real, and it's not. That one's real right here. And as soon as I turn it on, actually, if I turn it up a little more, it's pulsing. The power to it it's not consistent. So the whole grid here is pulsing. And another thing I've oddly noticed since I moved to California, every girlfriend I've ever had talks in their sleep, and that's never happened to me until I moved here. And apparently that's how Charlie got into all his research. He had a girlfriend who was talking in her sleep. He started recording it. He started hearing odd noises that he couldn't really make out. Then he started analyzing it because he was an audio engineer. And he would find these artificial voices in it that were talking and interacting with his girlfriend while she was sleeping, and she was talking back to it.
So that's how to engineer dreams. Interesting.
Well, I mean, and this is confirmed now too, because we can say this isn't conspiracy because we had the whole thing with McDonald's recently over the past year saying they want to advertise to us in our dreams. How would they do that? That's how they would do that. They would find a way to speak to us through the electronics around us.
Yeah.
So
it's pretty scary when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an easy way to like simulate the experience of an abductee would have. Like you could start really messing with people and make them think they're dealing with entities.
But that's just it. Could entities be getting given a voice? Could AI be an interface?
Well,
through which entities can, like, we need a brain to operate here and a voice, right? Could AI be the brain used for temporary incarnations? Like, can they possess the equipment of an AI?
this is the question, right? And I know that, I mean, I know that Charlie seems to be the one person I reference here, but I know Sabrina Wallace probably thinks this way too. I'm pretty sure she does, where they like don't like the bringing of they're like, no, it's human. Like we have this technology. It's pretty basic stuff. They seem to think, at least, but I am open to there being outside manipulation. I mean, even if it's not happening necessarily through the devices yet, it does seem like that's where it's going. I mean, I think that's why they're starting to use biological tissue and stuff when they're making certain computer devices. Like they're starting to use, I think, neurons from the brain to power computers now, and with memory and stuff like that. They call it wetware, I think.
It makes me think about the Second World War and the SS crew that was getting the technology for how to develop weapons from crystal ball seances from other beings. And these information was given to the scientists that started working on the bomb, that through Project Paperclip went to America to develop the H-bomb.
Exactly.
And so those scientists were working on information that came from entities.
All of them,
according to the official narrative of the Second World War.
They were all involved with seances. Even Turing. Turing was doing seances.
So, what you're saying makes perfect sense. Yes, we do have the technology. The question is, who gave it to us? Where do we get it? Did we get given bits of the technology in exchange for what?
Exactly.
And this was one of the reasons why the SS was in Tibet. Not
and
just
this is why they had a bunch of channels who were working for them.
So, I think that like what you're saying is true on both counts, and what those other people are saying is true. This is what I've noticed. Like the truth seems to be like everybody seems to speak the truth, in my perspective, one part of the truth. They're like, oh, I've seen the foot of the elephant. I know what an elephant's about because I've seen the foot. The other people, I've seen the ear. I know what the ear's like. The other people have got like, I know the tail and I know the trunk. And when you put all those puzzle pieces together, you can say, well, you're not wrong. That is the foot of the elephant. Indeed, that's the elephant you're holding. And you are holding the elephant too, but you're holding the ear. You're holding the elephant too, but you're holding the tail. You're all holding the elephant. Yes, you do have your hand on the elephant's belly. Indeed. So everybody's got a different part of the elephant, and we're all talking about the elephant that we can see.
Yeah.
But The deaf person can't hear the elephant. The blind person can't see the elephant. The person with a nervous system disorder can't touch the elephant. The person with a nasal problem can't smell the elephant.
And I will say that regarding Sabrina Wallace, she definitely is a spiritual person, and I know she's mentioned a lot of this is being like driven by fallen forces, fallen spirituals. So she's not, I think, against that aspect of it. I think she just thinks some of it is more simply done than we realize, because it's been around longer than we think. Whereas Charlie, I think he's more along the lines of, it's very rare that he's ever come across something. He has come across, I think, one case he said that he couldn't explain. He thought it was supernatural or paranormal or an evil. But everything else he said he's come across, he thinks it's explainable. So, I mean, they're not against these ideas, at least.
I agree with you. You know,
And I just don't want to. I don't want to talk totally for their opinions, because I know everyone has very nuanced opinions. Usually, when it comes down to it, I find, especially, and these people have all taught me things, so I don't want to speak anything that's untrue about them, and I don't mean to generalize when I'm talking about them.
No, that makes perfect sense, and like I think there's so many rabbit holes.
Yeah.
And every rabbit hole gives you like some kind of like a page of the book. And there's like so many pages out there. We've all got different chapters and pages of the book, and they're all true and they're all relevant. And it's very hard to sometimes, you know, interpret other people's what they've read, because like it's a very personal experience. So it makes sense what you're saying. It's very tricky to put a finger on it, you know, exactly whose beliefs are what. But I do think that I tend to agree with Vincent. Vincent's comment, don't mind voices in my head. It's the effing commercials I can't stand. But what you were saying about MCD, gonna put it in your head, gonna say you're gonna buy and sell before you've had your breakfast and your tea, that's a little bit scary, you know, and can get rather hairy when they start to like turn into the dream fairy.
That's like over a year old now, that whole thing, when they were talking about that. So it's weird, man. It's crazy that they would even be allowed to do that.
Yeah, I think the Neuralink is gonna make that all very easy.
And apparently, I know I've said this before, but they're not even gonna need the chips with Neuralink. There's a whole other aspect of Neuralink now where it's just something you could ingest and then it coats the brain. You don't need the chip. They haven't been public about this yet very much, but the patents exist.
Yeah, man. And it makes perfect sense, because like they are so plugged into our unconscious anyway. For example, Darren Brown. I don't know if you've watched Darren Brown. He's a mentalist, and
I've watched him.
He uses neuro-linguistic programming and such techniques to get into people's heads. And you'll be walking into the theater where he's doing his show, and there'll be NLP all around you on the walls. You won't see it. But he's told you what numbers you're going to choose. So if you can do that to someone consciously, and they don't know you're doing it, and you've got access to them on Facebook, on Google, on YouTube, everywhere, and AI systems able to overlay this into other people's videos, overlay it into images, and customize it based upon your analytics that it's got on you, your folder. This is the NLP that's going to work best for you. We'll overlay that onto your videos, overlay that onto your images, overlay that onto your sound, subtle sound frequencies that you unconscious. And then, your different psyche, you're more into, okay, so we're going to use this form of programming for you. You would be able to program people, and that programming is going to affect their dreams.
Yeah.
So even if you're not using the 5G, 6G, 7G generation technology or the Neuralink, you'd probably be able to program people's dreams through neuro-linguistic programming, where you're basically, your unconscious is being told, dream about this tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you're hypnotized.
And then it's being told it again and again and again throughout your day. What are you going to dream about in your sleep? So the technology even if the technology patents are not used, just the psychology technology exists for it to be a reality. 20 years ago, 50 years ago, that we had that knowledge of NLP.
Forever. This has been around forever. This is one of the tools of the dark priest class and the dark occultists. They love their epigenetic programming via language.
My cherry, fading out. I hope to go to sleep. Well, my cherry, I hope you have sweet dreams.
Yeah.
Blessed be
night,
Om
Cherry.
Shanti Namo Narayana. Sleep with peace and joy. And yeah, frankincense. My cherry. Frankincense. Burn frankincense in the room before you go to sleep. Really good for toning the brain for sleep and dreams. Really good. And toning the brain to not be fearful of the unconscious realities out there. So if you use enough frankincense and you meet an entity and it's a dark entity, you won't be afraid. You'll just meet it like face to face and go, what do you want? There's the door, dude. Use it. You know what I mean? So frankincense has that it calms the dream space, it calms the unconscious, it tones the heart rhythm. And when the heartbeat rhythm is strong, then your joy overrides the fear of the kidneys. Because the kidneys can only impinge on our consciousness if our heart rhythm isn't strong, and frankincense increases that resonance, which is good for the rhythm of the heart. So you can't get a fright. And if you know something's coming and you don't get a fright, then you don't have to be afraid. You're like, okay, what's going on? Nothing can creep up on you. But yeah, getting back to the potentials of these beings out there, sort of, we've been 2 hours and 21 minutes sort of to go towards sort of wrapping it up in some congruous way. I do think that these beings have been hidden from us, and I do think that the technology to engage with our sleep is all connected to this, and I personally believe that a lot of this technology has been made possible because of connections with what we could call extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional beings.
Yeah. I mean, I think like John Keel would have called them like ultra-terrestrial, the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis, where you can't even really explain some of these things because it's so far outside of like the physical reality that we're in, and some of them are so powerful that it's like they've been around forever. And a lot of them tend to act like tricksters when they manifest too, which doesn't help in discerning what's going on, because no one likes to talk about those experiences because they look like they're crazy, like you said. I personally think what's coming next is we're being set up to be presented with a video of an entity that's not human. I don't think it'll be alien. I think it'll be very well planned out, either some sort of deep fake or some sort of entity that's from here and just we have known about and we were never told about.
I tend to agree with you. I think we're definitely being primed. We're being primed for something.
I mean, I couldn't
We're being
believe
prepared.
that the whole egg thing happened right after I was saying, oh yeah, it's the anniversary of the Crowley's workings with lamb and the egg, and it's nonstop now. There's still videos coming out, more and more videos.
Which egg are you talking about? The egg under the sea, or
the one, that Jake Barber guy with the crazy eyes said he picked up with his helicopter. Now they're coming out with video that are showing like there was a heat signature that was hot enough to be radiological at the bottom of it, and there was a cool signature that was right above it using stereoscopic photography or something like that. Something similar to like what the MH370 videos did with the plane, and you could see the heat signatures in the plane.
yeah, that's very, very, very interesting, and I think that we're gonna see there's gonna be more of these And Systematic Zoo, how you doing? I hope you're good. Mentioning the Project Bluebeam, and I think like we're definitely being primed for something.
Yeah.
We're
I mean,
definitely being primed for something. Exactly how they're going to use this, what they're going to do with this. I suppose there's a lot of research out there. There's a lot of potential ways for them to. I think they've got a lot of playing cards up their sleeve that they can pull out whichever one's best for the occasion. Like, okay, this is going to get them to do what we need. Dink, we got that card. And they keep a box of cards. And that these are some of the cards we're mentioning that they can just play them on us and sort of affect our
To me, it
unconscious
seems
in
like
this way.
if they were smart and they have, what I think, and I'm sure you probably agree with, that they have advanced technology that they haven't shared with us. That's they basically probably have access to some form of free energy. And if they do have this, some of it they're going to try to introduce into society, and they're going to need an excuse. So they're going to give us an excuse as to how they got it and where they got it from. And it's just going to be something like this, even if it's just showing a video of some sort of entity and, oh, this is an ancient civilization where we had discovered it from. That's why we are just getting around to it. Or these were just dropped out of the sky. We don't really know where it came from. There was one entity that survived the thing, and now we have the technology and we've reversed it, and now we can use it. But it's not perfected, but it's almost there. And I mean, it's just a way to just slow 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And then they could put it back in the closet for another 10 years or so and then start doing it all over again.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, I've discussed a lot of some of these concepts, and I'm going to go into a concept now. It's pretty much a theme. Okay, so how I started getting into podcasting was I saw someone talking about the astral and the etheric, and I was like, these people don't know what they're talking about. And these people were so-called gurus and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, what happens when you read books and you have less experience than what you have more ideas? You get this top-heavy nonsense. And so I started podcasting, and it became an organic process where over 108 days, every morning I would channel the next piece in the penguin sanctuary, and like after watching the sunrise, staring at the sun. And so that became the first. So these are 2 free workshops, each of 108 lectures. So if you go into my podcast, you'll see BushWhisperer Speaks season 1 and season 2, and season 3 is on Patreon. I haven't uploaded it all yet. That's deep occult. But it starts off with like the ground, the foundation, and then like the baseline. And so they build onto each other. So there's 216, and these are all free. You can find them on Patreon as well without ads if you want to watch them. You don't have to pay money. It's in my free subscribers thing. But so that's like base spirituality principles coming from a shamanic perspective, but using all the Vedic and the Kabbalistic concepts woven together from a shamanic base. And one of the things that I'm always talking about is the chain of life, and how like our bodies are made out of like organisms. So we think of our organs as being as being just organs, but from a shamanic perspective, I think of them as separate beings that are operating together in an environment of the body, and that the environment is made out of populations of different populations of beings, and that the organ is made out of different populations of beings that work together in order to maintain that environment, which becomes a being.
Mm-hmm.
And that within the systems of our body and the tissues of our body, there are populations of beings that work together, and so our entire system is a complex web of a chain of life, and this is physically. And then our thoughts and our concepts and our realizations and our intuitions and instincts and our notions and our analysis are all the same thing, different parts of different beings. Every thought that we think is a being, but that being is part of a population of thoughts. And the thoughts are part of a population that become tissues. And the tissues become organs as like a conceptual ability to conceptualize, or an intuitive organ, or in the same way that our physical bodies have organs. And so as above is mirrored as below. And so there's this chain of life, and every part of us is a different being operating with other beings. Memory is a different being. It's a being that operates with the being of rational, and so, but that being consists of, once again, populations and tissues. And so there's this fractal expression of consciousness and this fractal expression of the body, and that the fractal expression of consciousness and the body are mirrored as above, so below. And so this represents what I would call the chain of being, which is a fractal expansive universe that is expanding from within itself and contracting to within itself. And when that universe contracts so small within itself, it starts to come out of the cosmos and gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it contracts all the way down through our solar system, down through our planet, down through our bodies, down through our minds, and keeps contracting back. Tiny DNA, atoms, DNA, particles, chemicals, until it becomes once again the galactic contraction. And the expansion is the same process. Coming out of the DNA is expanding out, so that basically we are connected to the entire galaxy and all the other galaxies, because that's all within us and we are all within it. So this is like the notion behind the fractal nature of being, and so this chain of life basically are beings. And so we are connected to so many beings energetically. And this is like the idea of the shamanic guides. Like, people are like, what are these guides? Well, these guides are these beings that are operating within the sphere that we have access to. So we can literally speak to our heart. But our heart isn't just an organ, it's a being. And so these beings are connected to particular DNA frequencies, which we can see in nature. So there's a resonant frequency between the lion and our heart. There's a resonant frequency between these two, and various other different frequencies and different organs. So this is like where the shamanic cosmology comes in, when the Vedic ideas and all the ancient ideas of like humans and animals merging to become God forms, because of our unconscious ability to experience these other beings, and recognizing that this being is actually reflected in nature, and I can actually see this being somehow objectively in that creature because it shares some kind of frequency. And so from a shamanic perspective, we connect with the spirit of the horse, because it's relating to the sphere of Jupiter, for example, that personal power, expansiveness of our consciousness, which we can consider as being the organ of our skin, which is a being we can talk to, Jupiter. And Saturn obviously would be the bones, right? And our bones and our hair, which we can see reflected in a goat, because a goat holds those qualities. The way a goat jumps up a mountain, they just keep jumping up, man. They jump. I'm busy and alive. And seriously, this woman knows I'm alive. Can't believe she comes in, tries to talk to me. And so there's this constant jumping up, of this mountain, and they're be 1,000 meters up. They're jumping, and you watch this. You go like, seriously, dude? Are you on crack? Is what you think when you look at this creature. And then they'll slip. And they'll start falling down. They'll fall down 50 meters, 100 meters, hundreds of feet. Cluck, cluck, cluck. You hear them cluck, 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 cluck. Oh, they got on to a piece of ledge. Okay. Once again, cluck, cluck, jumping 10, 15, 20 feet at a time up. These rams, these goats, they are like brave as. That's your hair, that's your bones, that's that fundamental structure of the universe, that holds everything together. So yeah, this chain of life, it means that we are always in contact with beings. We're never who we think we are is a conglomeration of different beings. It's an interesting concept, and sort of ties into the Vedic concept of Manu and the Kabbalistic concept of Adam Kadmon. This cosmic being that we're all part of, and the Ahriman and the Lucifer.
Oh yeah, it's super tied into all this. All of
the polarities of these beings within this being. There's polarities of these beings.
Steiner specifically talks about going through the body and visual, and he sees the beings within the bloodstream, within the various systems. He was very good at doing this, apparently.
Yeah. So for those of you that are interested, go and take a look at this. Like 216 videos out there. Have fun. They're only 10 minutes, so they're short. But you might find that the chain of life is a theme that I'm building on. And that's why there's lots of little videos, because then when you're going into the deeper, more occult ideas like what we're expressing here, then you can build onto that idea and you can use that in exercises.
Yeah, see, I need to start. I probably need to start watching some of them and start doing some of the exercises, because I understand the stuff, I feel like, but it's very hard for me to get in that. I've never, I've told you I've been out of body maybe the one time when I had that one experience with the etheric plane, seeing the black and white, seeing my room black and white, and that was it. I tried a few times before that, a few times after that, but never really put much work into it. And I know if you want to go even deeper and get into the stuff you're talking about, where you can actually see these processes taking place inside, that's a lot. It takes I know there's a lot of people, like you were saying, online who act like you could do it overnight, but no, it takes work to do these sorts of things. It's not easy.
Well done, Systematic. Woo! That's a good one, dude. That's like right at the beginning, sunrise. This is why I wake up, and that's why I climbed the mountain this morning with my 8-year-old. Sunrise, man. Be up for the sunrise. Try. Powerful medicine in the sun and in the moon. It's the key. But yeah, that's definitely accessible. The most powerful exercise that I could say and I recommend to people. Okay, so like, what can we do? Yes. What can we do? There is nothing more powerful than rhythm. I mean, you as a singer, you get this, right?
And that's maybe why I've gotten away with not doing some of the other things for, why I've gotten away with not having to teach myself how to astral project, because I naturally have some clairvoyant sort of gifts where highly intuitive. I've had the lucid dreaming majority of my life until more recently, and then it started coming back in 2020. So then I don't push it with the other things, but I probably should. It is work, but the music and having that sense of rhythm definitely, I think, helps with all of that.
Yeah, so like basically getting a drum is like probably the best thing most people can do. To get yourself a flat drum, and the rhythm doesn't have to be, you're not looking for an necessarily exquisite rhythm, but as you go into the rhythm, it will build itself. And just to get the act of generating a rhythm and falling into the rhythm, allowing your consciousness to get into that rhythm, and then observing how your heartbeat is affected by that rhythm, and then allowing that to just become like a background program in your consciousness. And so if there's something wanting to interfere with you, you're like, hold one moment, where's my rhythm? And that thing's like, no, but I want to interfere with you. It's like, yeah, wait a minute. Sorry, this rhythm, I'm really digging the rhythm. You're going to have to wait. And like these beings don't have that much patience. Like, no, I know what you say is important to you, but just give us a minute. This rhythm's just too damn good. And then the being starts getting spun out, and you say, I tell you what, I'm going to talk this rhythm to you. And then the being's like, no, that's changing my frequency. I don't want to change my frequency. It's like, well, yes, you want to interact with me. That's how this works. Rhythm. So getting into that rhythm is the most powerful consciousness current, or the easiest powerful consciousness current to generate, which is why shamanism is all about the rhythm. Because you get into like, you can be having a really bad day and you listen to a good track. And whatever the day was, it's gone, man. It's like, when the track's got that rhythm, you just want to move your body. It's like You know what I'm saying? Like we used to dance to celebrate people leaving the world. What happened? No, got to wear black, got to be all morbid. Can't we just like kick back and wear colorful clothes and bang a drum and have a dance? No. You can't. But the ancient cultures, many of them do.
Well, I mean, but that makes total sense because we're being programmed by transhumanists who want us to fear death.
Yep. So, like that, if you ask me about the best solution is rhythm for dealing with energies, entities, and meditation, and tuning the heart and the body and the frequency of the brain and the heart to all be in one frequency so that you can sort of notice, hold on, am I in my body? What am I in? What is, oh, here's my body. Where am I? And that's like the first point of like, oh, right, I'm here. So what are the implications? And then let's follow the rhythm. Where's the rhythm taking us? And the rhythm's taking us somewhere. It's like, whoa, this rhythm's taking me out of my body. So there's a lot of implications behind that rhythm for protection psychically in order to bring about a sense of harmony and integrity of your energetic systems, bring them all into a single alignment rhythm. Also the rhythmic, the heartbeats, the physical health elements of the heartbeat being good. If the heartbeat's good, everything's in rhythm. The flow of the blood is good. Everything's in rhythm. The pressure's correct. The system's getting all the oxygen and nutrition it needs. It's getting detoxified. The circulation works better because the heartbeat's beating better. So the lungs are breathing better. So the oxygen being used up by thoughts is better modulated. So the thoughts aren't running too quickly one after another. And there's space between the thoughts to just listen to the birds and the sky and the wind and feel the earth moving under your feet when you walk and going, that's interesting. Am I moving or is the world moving? It's quite, which part is moving? Like my brain tells me that I'm moving, but I'm wondering, like, is the world moving under my feet and I'm stationary? The imagination starts to bring out all these other potentials of extra-dimensional reality. So the drum is a key. The sun is another key. Watching the sunrise, man, or the sunset.
Yeah, I'm big on the sunset, and then for some reason I'm much more comfortable in the moon. I don't know why. It doesn't make really much sense. I'm an Aries.
When's your birthday?
March 31st.
Dude, it's next month.
It's coming
Cool,
up.
man.
Coming up. But yeah, but
man.
I'm more comfortable in the moonlight. I don't know why.
I was my whole life. And I had to, so the moon regulates our feelings, our emotions, and our moods. The sun regulates our thinking and like the electrical central nervous system as opposed to the hormonal system. So you being moon driven means you probably like, because you're a singer and you're into music, it's very much a feeling. It's an emotional intelligence thing, isn't it? Like music.
But I also think it kind of makes sense now that you said the sun with the central nervous system, because I mean, even that stomach thing I had is connected to central nervous system. Like it's a functional pain where they don't know the cause, but I mean, stress makes it worse. So of course it's connected to the central nervous system.
Do you still sometimes suffer?
Sometimes, yeah. It's never been the same.
Have you thought of kombucha? Kombucha.
Oh yeah, I've tried almost everything except for like going to some other country or some crazy specialist. I was gonna see one out here that was like $800 a visit though. I was like, I can't do that.
Yeah, no, because basically eating sauerkraut and like little bits and getting basically it's that population in the gut.
Yeah. See, part of me worries that they there was a good amount of damage done by the amount of antibiotics they gave me, because it wasn't just one course, it was 3, because they messed up the first month. The second month didn't work. The third month finally worked.
Yes, but the microbiology that we have in our gut, so like 50% of
heal
all the
itself,
cells in our
right?
body, they can actually regenerate the DNA.
Yeah.
So they plug into your system and they drive your adaptation. Our biological adaptation is being driven by our microbiology. So in maintaining, like focusing on gut health, like strongly, like you probably shouldn't eat white bread ever. You probably shouldn't
I
eat
don't.
too much wheat. You should probably eat, if you eat bread, it should probably be the black rye bread.
Yeah. I don't eat much bread at all.
And
One
if
thing
you
that
eat,
helps is the Wim Hof breathing. Helps
Yeah.
a lot. It almost like
That
probably
would-
saved my life, honestly, when I first started.
that makes
Yeah.
sense, because that's basically bringing more prana into the body. That's flowing the pranic energy through all the ducts. Though focusing on that microbiology is quite a powerful thing. So diet is really a key. You know, eating enough green leaves. Yeah.
I don't eat bad, so that's what's always been weird to me, is like I eat very healthy. That's why I wonder if it's maybe just like more of a consistency just with the other practices.
What water do you drink?
What tea do I drink?
What water do you drink?
Oh, the water I drink is either, where's the one? It's that German sparkling water that is from, it's like one of the last natural springs left. The hell is it called? Something with a G. There's a lion on it. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Because like these bottled waters, like I get water from my girlfriend, who's got a well.
It's
And
Gerolsteiner. Gerolsteiner water is it's in a glass bottle. That's usually the water I will drink. If not, I'll drink like Perrier. I always drink usually sparkling water. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I think it's a bad thing.
Probably for my stomach, at least.
CO2. Yeah. You see, because you're adding carbon, and if you get bottled water and you bubble it with a fish bubbler, then you're increasing the oxygen count. And interesting, just bubbling the water with a fish pump and
the Gerolsteiner is like, I think, the last natural spring that's carbonated in the world, I'm pretty sure. So they don't at least that one's not artificial.
No. I completely get that it's natural carbonated water. Yeah. I'm just thinking about the CO2.
Just too much of it, right?
Because the body wants to get the CO2 out. So CO2 doesn't do good for gut health.
Yeah.
For those microbes.
I mean, I drink Fiji water, but I know it's in plastic.
Most of the bottled water, unfortunately, is stored in bottles, so the oxygen levels drop because of the storage. It's just how it is. That's the water's not breathing, and so if you're drinking unsparkled water and you bubble it, you increase the oxygen. It also it pushes out all of the positive hydrogen ions of the water, which is what anaerobic microbes thrive on. Aerobic bacteria and things, microbes, they thrive on oxygen, and so and the presence of negative ions of the hydrogen. So the negative ions of the hydrogen replacing the positive ions of the hydrogen just by bubbling your water can change your pH level by a factor of 10. So that means there'll be 10 times less ratio of positive hydrogen ions to negative hydrogen ions. 10 times ratio. That's like the difference between having 10 people standing there and 100 people standing there, or one person standing there and 100 people standing there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a huge difference. That's how much of a difference the ions make just by bubbling it. And so that's why the water will jump by a whole factor. So you'll see, like, if it's, you pH test it before you bubble it. If it's 5.6 or 5.7, by the time you finish bubbling it, it'll be like 6.7, maybe even going towards 7.
Mm-hmm.
And if it starts on 6.8, it'll go to like 7.8. So, and the more alkaline the water, the better, because so much of our food tends to be acidic. We tend to be over acidic. So that balance of alkalinity and acidity is what gives the positive microbes in the gut a chance to populate, and they then are the ones that are symbiotic with us. Where the anaerobic bacteria, they are not in symbiosis with us. They are, what do you call it? Parasitic.
Yeah.
But they are parasitic and they feed off of our symbiotic microbes. So having the population in a state of balance means that the parasitic bacteria don't turn on us.
Makes total sense.
Sort of like if there's enough seals in the sea, I don't have to worry about the sharks.
Yeah.
But if there are not enough seals in the sea, watch out for the damn sharks because they're hungry.
Exactly. No, it makes total sense.
It's a problem we have here. Not enough seals in the sea. So if you see a shark, a great white, you got to be careful because they don't have much to eat. They don't want to eat humans, but like, oh, that looks like a seal. I don't know. I'm hungry. Let's taste it. But yeah, it's very interesting how the biology and the consciousness is resonating. And so that could be like, you know how much of our memory is relating to our sense of smell?
Mm-hmm. I think we discussed this a little bit last time.
Yeah. And so our sense of smell is plugged into our sense of taste. And so these two work in symbiosis with each other. Like the smell, if you've got a bad taste in your mouth, things might smell weird. If there's a bad smell in the room where you're eating, the food might taste wrong.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
Like if this is why you ask people, please don't fart at the table while I'm eating. I got an 8-year-old, okay? So like, dude, you don't fart at the table when people are eating. No, dude. No.
No.
Yeah. So like this chain of life is an interesting thing when we look at our brains, because different parts of our brains are also sub-organisms. And so when we talk about those neural pathways linking up different parts of the brains, it's getting organisms to work together to create like, you want to move that car? What, are you going to push it now? Oh, you couldn't push it. You try. You couldn't. You try. You got 1,000 people here. You all tried to push that car. You couldn't move it. If all 1,000 of you get together and 100 of you get a rope and sling it under the car, another 100 of you get a rope and sling it under the car like this, another 100 of you get a rope, sling it under the car like this, another 100, right? And then like 20 of you stand around the car and pick it up. You guys can carry that bloody car anywhere you want.
Yeah.
But one by one, you're not going to get, that's sort of like what we're talking about, getting the different neural pathways to work together is the difference between being able to push a car or carry a car. Literally, like as the metaphor goes.
Yeah.
So on an energetic in our body, it's the same, I think, you know, like you can live long, you can be healthy.
Absolutely. And it's weird with the Wim Hof stuff too, because some of it seems to be even just believing, which is, I love that idea. It always reminds me of the like the way I mean, just taking the stories from the Bible, however you want to, of Christ doing a miracle. It's like the reason, even if these stories are just totally made up, who cares? But the lesson in it, the reason he's able to do the miracle is because it's not that he believes, it's not even that he believes he could do it. He anticipates that it's already done. And this is something Wim Hof is starting to move to now, with where he's like, you don't even need the breathing. You just need to know that you could do it before you go out and do it, and you can go run up Everest or run out in the snow in just your underwear, not break down and freeze to death. And that's what he does in his retreats at his little cabin in the woods and wherever he's at, Dutchland. So I think there's something interesting about that.
Yeah, I think that whole thing is so important. Like all meditation comes back to the breath, like fundamentally. And this is what you notice when you're playing a drum. You notice that your breathing becomes rhythmic. Your heart becomes rhythmic. So I think when our breathing is rhythmic, our heart rhythm improves. So you do these exercises with your breath in order to get your breath.
Yeah, see, he may not do the breathing methods as much for this, but that's my favorite part of it. That's all, pretty much all I do out of it at this point is the breathing stuff, because it helps me so much. And it probably is, like you're saying, the rhythm of it. There's also a feel to it too that you get when you're doing it, that you just don't get from just forcing yourself to jump in the cold. It's not the same.
Yeah. No, you're completely right there. And once the heart is beating well, then the plasma. Now, it was Systematic Zoo that was talking about the blood plasma, right? And memory and plasma and blood. And reprogramming memory. So it's more like you remember that it's going to happen. You remember that it's happening. Rather than believing it, you remember, this is happening.
Yeah, so that does connect to some of, yeah.
So that reprogramming of the blood plasma has got to do with the heart's getting the circulation to move well, means that all the organs can operate together. Instead of we're talking about the car, lifting the car, all the organs working together, because the heart is like the blood plasma is conducted by the heart. And so that's the breath and the heart. It's the circulatory systems, which is basically the heart extending through the breath extending through the heart, moving the blood. And then that blood gets that right sort of movement. It gets the right pitch. It gets the right frequency, because so the blood platelets, so you got white blood cells, which we hear, but the red blood cells have got these plates that rub against each other. And there's an acoustic field. And there's an electrical discharge of friction. And so when the blood is moving just right, and the patterns of that friction, the acoustic resonant field running through the blood, that runs through the bones, that runs through all the DNA, gets that sweet spot of tone. Sort of like a song when you just hit the right notes and it just feels so damn good.
Mm-hmm.
But then the body is singing its own song. And so that breath becomes that it's the whole key to understanding the whole universe, the breath from a Vedic perspective. That's why they speak of Hansa. Yeah? Or Ham-sa, as it's in the older times was called. And those are the two sounds of hum and sa. So it's the sound that the breath makes when it comes in. When you've got your mouth closed and you're breathing through your nose, it makes an acoustic resonance on the bone inside you, which feels like an M. And then when you breathe out, it's like coming up through the nasal. So it literally makes a hum, sa, hum, sa. So focusing on the hum and the sa brings you to a balance. And then there's alternate nostril breathing as well, exercises,
Yeah.
which is like one side of the body, one side of the brain being activated more in order to align this and then align this and move from this to this down here, move from this to this down here. And so that causes the whole system to get into a good, like a motor rhythm. Once again, get into a good rhythm. Like the wheels are turning like on a bicycle, like perfectly. It's like cycling, like you're cycling and you get into that rhythm. And when you hit that sweet spot rhythm, you hardly have to push the pedals. I used to be a cyclist when I was young. Like if you're riding like 100 kilometers, it's like pretty damn hard, right? Over mountains and stuff. It's like you're riding this bicycle for like 3.5 hours, dude. You're going to sweat your butt off. Your legs are going to feel like they're on fire. But when you get that sweet spot on the rhythm, it's like that calibration just right, where you're not really pushing. It just runs itself. You just keep it going. And then you can get it like that for a long time. And then the road gradient changes. It's like, oh, damn, I need a new rhythm. I need a new frequency. I need a new, got to recalibrate this pedals, got to recalibrate all of the systems and get that rhythm going. When that rhythm's just right, the momentum carries it over,
And see, this is what I think Sabrina Wallace talks about when she's talking about her biofield work. And she's like, you need to strengthen the biofield or the aura around you through stuff like this. Basically, you need to get your body in a rhythm that's positive and healthy for yourself. So you're not affected by whether it's a technology or something that's trying to interfere with your aura and your field and affect you negatively. It could be an entity, it could be a technology, it could be anything.
Yeah, man. Yeah, good rhythm. Good rhythm is the key.
Everyone's got to get their rhythm back, and then that's the thing. It's like everything has gone so far away from that. It's like we're in front of these screens that are going 75 MHz per second. Like people are using binaural beats because they can't get into any sort of state on their own. We're on these phones and these wireless frequencies that are just hitting us with pulses all day that are throwing us off. Our cell phones get pulses nonstop from the towers. None of the power we have is like a steady stream. None of the signals we get are steady streams of signal. They're all pulsed signals, and that's so unhealthy because it's just hitting us and changing the rhythm that we're living in all the time.
And then of course the music. What passes for music? And you're like trying to figure out like what is the message here? Like what's my heart do when it listens to this? Because your heart wants to mimic sound. Interesting how the heart wants to do that, eh?
It's gonna murmur after a while. That's what's gonna happen. It's gonna skip, and then you're not gonna feel great.
Yeah, I do think, and another thing that's mentioned here, LED light bulbs. You mentioned it before, the frequencies.
They're awful. Well, the whole color spectrum in them is awful. We're just bathed in blue light all day. It's terrible for you. I think they've shown now even with mice and then with people, they've done smaller studies with people, but they've done it with both sets of lights. Like you can only do the ones that you think are going to help in the studies with people because of ethics laws and stuff like that. But with the mice, they've done the blue light and then they've done the red light. They've done both. And they find it like if you hit a mouse, I think with red light therapy for like an hour a day, basically all the ailments they were having of like memory loss when they're getting older and stuff like that, they all go away.
Is it red light therapy you're saying, or green light?
Red light. But I think that's just because it has something to do with just how we're all bathed in the highest spectrum of light in the LED bulbs is blue. Yeah, so it's like they're
Yeah.
counteracting that with the red.
Makes sense.
And it has to be, I think, a red from a UV source, not red from an LED, because unless you have a full spectrum LED light, which I don't think they even have yet for the public, at
Yes,
least.
Mexico, we're going strong. 3 hours and still going. The clock just keeps ticking in the background.
I know. We probably should wrap up because
this
we went 4
brings
hours
me
last time.
To a very interesting point. And I'm going to say, damn Dalila. Damn, damn. Damn, damn. Damn, damn. Damn, damn. Damn, damn, damn. Damn, 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 damn. You see, the dilemma that I've created for myself here is an unusual one, where I didn't anticipate how long we would be on. And so I didn't download. Delete. I don't want to lose space. We're going to run out of space. So are you in a rush to go, brother?
No, but do you want to wrap it though, so we can save up your space?
No, I'm past that point.
Oh God. And no, I still got a little bit of time. Usually I gotta clean up a little before the girlfriend gets home, but she won't be home for another probably 30 minutes, 45 minutes.
Well, in the next 10 minutes, I reckon I can download that that thing. If I can download it, then I can delete a file, if that makes sense. And
no, that I know what you're trying to do. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
I'm gonna make sure I get a membership this week now that I got paid finally, and get rid of my Zoom membership. I was waiting for a bunch of checks.
I think the Zoom thing might work better. Ironically, this is a weird sound.
It's cheaper
because the Zoom can run through this.
Really?
Yeah. You could do it in Zoom and you can project it through this, and through this project it through that. So
Zoom at least now goes directly to YouTube.
It does, but you could put Zoom through this and this can send it to other destinations, just as an example. So
wow. Wait, so then that would save me a bunch of money.
So there's that as a possibility, and I'm looking at this. The best software for streaming,
OBS
by the
Studio.
way.
I could do
just
Zoom
hard
through
to use.
Could do Zoom through OBS.
Yeah, that is the premium. You put Zoom through OBS. OBS is the most solid software. Just learning to use it, but then from there you can stream it to all your destinations. So if you're using Zoom, you're just basically moving that stream onto OBS Studios, and then just using OBS as a relay. And the recommended one to use with OBS, funnily enough, is Twitch. Twitch streaming software is apparently supreme, so you can integrate Twitch with OBS very easily.
I actually have
send your Twitch stream.
They gave me like a check mark on Twitch or whatever the hell for because music. Because of one of my music gets distributed everywhere, and I guess it's just like came with one of my distributors, my online distributors. So I have a Twitch channel.
Yeah, so that's what I've heard. But OBS is the best for solidness of your stream, and I think that's the most stable streaming software. So it's something to look at. Like I had audio problems last time. In the round table, that wouldn't have happened with OBS.
Really?
The most solid, yeah. Ironic. Open source is always the best. I'm using Linux here because it's the best.
I heard they're trying to make that illegal. I heard they're trying to take it away.
Yeah, well, they're trying, but now what's happening is Linux is actually being loaded onto computers. You can buy computers with the Linux operating system on it.
Well,
Because
is it
people
that they're
want
trying
it.
to is it that they're trying to take it away, or they're trying to make like Web3 incompatible with it? Something like that. They're just trying to make it so that you can't use it.
It's too similar to the Unix systems.
Yeah.
It is a Unix-based system, which is what the CIA and the FBI and all of those three-letter agencies use. So, like, they don't want us to have the kind of security they have.
Yeah.
They want to be able to get in the back door. They don't want us to be free and able to, you know, they want access. That's what it is. They want access, and Microsoft is great access. So yeah, getting back to the conversation about you know, possible techniques and exercises. Another thing I think which people have really forgotten is very simple, what I call natural magic. There's something so powerful about natural magic, and we used to use it more so. Like an example, the rituals of your day, how you wash your body can be an act of natural magic. Lighting a candle, you can extrapolate more. You can write words on the candle: peace, love, harmony, and light the candle, and unconsciously, neurolinguistically, be programming peace, love, and harmony into your consciousness. And so there's so many little techniques that we could use, and they're really easy to use, you know, if we get right down to the bottom, the nitty-gritty of it, to look and understand just how these systems operate within the body, and just how easy it is to actually interface and to get that sort of fundamental sort of connection. I think another thing as well is got to do with writing. There's something powerful about a diary. Do you have a diary?
I have a notebook. I don't know if I'll call it a diary yet, because I don't write as much as I should in it, and I mostly write just like random stuff right now. I always have had problems with writing and keeping notes, and I know that's another thing I need to work on. I've never, even in school, I never had a notebook. I just didn't.
I've not liked taking notes. But what I noticed was having a diary for my emotions. Wow. To observe the emotions and put it down on paper and then forget about it. And like you feel something and write down your innermost thoughts and feelings. How you felt towards that person, how you felt towards yourself, how you felt when you noticed this had happened. How did you feel when you missed the bus? Like, how did you feel? What was the feeling? Having a little diary with you, that's like some very seriously powerful magic. Because you put these feelings in and you notice patterns within yourself. You go, holy shit, man. I'm running all these algorithms.
Back when I was into more doing music and writing songs more, that's kind of, I think, what I was doing when I was like, I want to make a band, and I just started writing songs. That was kind of, I think, what I was doing at that time, because it was definitely a time when I needed to be doing that too, because I was all scattered and had no idea what the hell I wanted to do with my life, and music wasn't even something I'd thought about. So it definitely helped.
Yeah, there's some very powerful medicine in the diary and in writing down our thoughts. One of the most powerful exercises that I would recommend to anybody, everybody, whether you want to learn spiritual technologies, whether you want to just become more balanced in your life, whether you want to become more healthy and physically and mentally more healthy, whether you want to develop your ESP and psychic spiritual abilities and turn your memory into a super engine. If you work in an office and you've got to remember a lot of information, you don't want to have to rely on looking up at databases. Memory. So one of the most powerful memory palace is one, but the daily review is such a simple exercise you do the daily review? Did you get into that much?
I was looking up here because I have a lot on Giordano Bruno, who did the memory wheels, and that was something I got into a little bit. And I did do the daily reviews for a while because that was one of Steiner's exercises that right before you went to bed you retraced your whole day. I can't remember now if it was backwards or from the start to the end.
Backwards.
I'm pretty sure. I think it was back. It was backwards, right? Yeah.
Spun backwards.
Yeah, no, that does.
You literally get to the point where you woke up in the morning. And you go, okay,
does help.
now I'm ready to go to sleep. Get into bed, go to sleep. It's such a wonderful feeling of like, and I open my eyes. Oh, okay, I'm going to close my eyes and lie down. It just makes so much sense. But it becomes, if you do it religiously, like I must have done it like religiously for like, I don't know, decades.
Really? Jeez, that's probably.
Yeah. Then you like the daily review, it gets longer. It becomes like a 30, 45-minute episode.
You can go further back and back then too, right?
No, well, there's more things to remember in your day.
But doesn't that help you
Oh
eventually?
yes, that little thing fell off the counter.
Doesn't that help you eventually with like if you want to have like a past life type of experience in the ash? Yeah. Kind of starts training that process. It
develops the memory. Yeah. And then like you say, then you do a weekly session. Every month you do a week. And every season you do a season, and every year you do a year. So for me, a new year, people used to say, what are you going to spend your, like, I didn't want to go New Year partying. I want to spend my New Year's, I want to just chill. What do you I've got like a program. I want to do my thing, you know? I want to relive my whole year backwards.
And this is like the definition of knowing yourself. And like, I mean, all of this, I feel like we're talking about. So like, if you ever come into a situation where you're dealing with something like, whether it's an entity or whether it's harassment from some sort of outside force, you know what's you, what's not you, and ways you can chill yourself out and not have to deal with it.
Absolutely. I was looking about somebody talking about the back door on Diddy.
Yeah, I just saw that too.
Hold a moment, like, well, what did I just walk into? Like, oh, that back door. Oh my gosh. That was Systematic Zoo. Yeah, brother, you're right about that. Diddy bitty. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of this, unfortunately, in this world we're living in. Being parents makes it very hard to quantify that this is happening, and to have to face it and have to acknowledge it and have to live within this paradigm, this dynamic, that this is a reality that we're facing, and that there is no quick and easy solution for this. You know, it is a sad reality that we've reached this point of you know, of being stuck and trapped in this paradigm of reality that we find ourselves in, where this is being done. And like, I'm sure in California now, they found a lot of openings into the ground, haven't they? Connecting up all these people's houses. And
they have, but no one believes it though. Most people, the normies, don't believe it.
Yeah, but it's there.
Yeah, it's there. But
people are recognizing it.
And then if people find it and do believe it, they get, like I said, they get told it's from prohibition.
Celebrities. Celeb. Stars. Katas. Yeah, catastrophe. So is that the Greek word for, no, what's the Greek word for star? Asteri. Asteria. Asteri. Catastrophe. is the passing of a star. And so they want us to worship these stars. Because when you're worshipping a star, when the star passes, it's a catastrophe. And that's like makes it more, what's that word? Sensationalist.
Mm-hmm.
And sensationalism is a big part of the programming today.
It's
So we want to decondition.
It's a spectacle. To use the spectacle.
Yeah. And they want us all wearing spectacles.
And I do wear spectacles, actually. I wear contacts and spectacles because my eye vision is very bad. Always has been.
It's like Cosmic's also spoken about this quite a lot. It's something that I bring up in my BushWhisperer Speaks series, both of them. The periphery. How what you see in the periphery, it's very easy to see things in the periphery if we allow ourselves to see what's happening in the periphery.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like for example, if there's someone else in the room, now, hypothetically, I will in my peripheral vision see like there's somebody here. I'll be like, what? Oh, there's no one there. Okay. And then they'll be back there. No, they're there. Like you see things in your periphery. That's how you know if there's another being or something present. You'll first notice it in the periphery.
Same with night. If the lights go out, you'll first be able, if you want to see like quicker than before your eyes adjust, okay, use your peripheral vision. Same thing happens.
That's true. I lived in the dark. Did I tell you I used to live in the jungles barefoot and I never used a torch?
That's wild, dude.
I never used a torch ever.
That's wild.
So like I trained myself to see in the dark. By like you say,
we have so
seeing
much
the peripheral
potential.
darkness.
We have so much potential. It's such a shame that we're all being tapped into for our energy. It's like, and it's upsetting.
Yeah, man, it is a little upsetting to think that when we think about like this agenda of transhumanism and just how far they want to take this, like it's somehow almost we got to be careful that we don't allow it to depress us, that we don't allow it to take us down that road of cringe.
It's a black pill, and especially it can be if you let it, especially when you like hear that, oh, they're already using parts of your body as biosensors and you can't do anything about it because you don't want to remove that part of your body. And then the artificial biosensors they're using apparently depend on your body to be in a state of alkalinity. So they survive in an alkaline environment. So if you're healthier and your body's alkaline, the artificial biosensors survive. It's like, that's messed up.
I suppose
because they're anticipating. They're anticipating like
they only want to monitor the healthy people because the rest of the people are part of another plan.
Care less about them.
Like those are going to be washed out anyway. We've got plans for them.
Or they have other forms of monitoring that doesn't even require them going to that length. But
the only ones they need to care about are the healthy ones, because I think they've got us to the point where the population is going to decline quite fast.
Mm-hmm.
Because of illnesses that people are going to get when they're young. A lot of people are going to get very ill, much more, I think. We see this now already. And as the quality of our drinking water and our food goes down, right, which it is. Like even since the Armprick adventure, there's a visible notice to the lack of quality of food. And that's just the last 5 years. So give it another 15, 20 years where food production is going. It's going to start to hit a certain tilting point where we'll start noticing it more after that. Like give it another 5, 10 years after it reaches that point. We'll start noticing a lot of people becoming terminally ill when they're young. And basically be addicted to pharmaceuticals and on their way out. And it's going to be I think it's going to be a big awakening for a lot of people. I would give it like 15, 20 years from now when we see that. And that's going to be the point where people are going to start realizing, what have we been doing? I think that's going to be the point where there's a mass sort of recognition. And a lot of people will be, well, what can we do about it? And that'll be where the kickback, and I don't mean kickback like under the table government kickback, I mean kickback like, wah,
Yeah.
starts.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's going to happen
And
sooner than later.
And I think that that they've managed to keep all these spiritual beings. So the eighth sphere, we spoke about the eighth sphere last time. I'm picking up from that. These beings in the eighth sphere are able to interact with us. So the 7 demons were in occult lore named the 7 emotions, harmful emotions, right? Greed, lust,
Gluttony,
gluttony, sloth,
wrath.
Rage. What's the word? Not anger.
Wrath.
Wrath.
Yeah.
So these are beings. We think of them as just emotions that we experience, but when we look at the chain of life and the cosmic structure of things, these are beings. And these beings, when they are talking to us, they speak to us through our organs. So our organs can become possessed. And when these beings possess our organs, they can slowly start to possess the rest of us. And so our organs can be possessed by these energetic beings. And I believe that these are like the kings of the 8th sphere. Kings and queens, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And underneath them, they have like armies. And then there's all those subdivisions of those emotions, you know?
Yeah.
Envy breaks up to jealousy, breaks up to this, breaks up. And there's all these subtle nuances. And those are like lieutenants. And then there's thoughts that are structured under that consciousness. And so there's certain wheels and patterns of thinking that will have certain families of these beings that operate together that will work as like the wheel underneath the scooter of wrath or whatever. And
Absolutely.
they're always running through our unconscious, trying to assert themselves into us. And so the fact that we now believe that those beings aren't real makes us identify with the wrath as if it's our emotion, which is something I think we never used to do in the past. That's an interesting perspective. In the old times, if you were like that, you were considered to be possessed by wrath. Now, possession isn't a real thing. So we're not possessed by wrath. We're just angry. Isn't it interesting the way we identify with these emotions as being ourselves?
But the same thing was thought with genius. Like you were, like the genius was like something you channeled, basically. It wasn't yours.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. And now that's the other side of the same spectrum.
Yeah. It's a weird little double-edged sword there with that.
Yeah, I mean, we can be possessed by these really positive beings as well. And I suppose this is when I always thought about the Holy Breath and the Christos, it made me think about sort of being possessed by love. Can you be possessed by love? Can you be possessed by compassion? To the point where you can't bear to see someone or another creature suffering, you want to help them.
See, I think if you look at it as a co-creative thing with both of them, positive and negative, then you're also not letting yourself off the hook for your actions when you're doing something wrong. But you're also acknowledging that you are putting in the work and working with a positive force that also is higher than yourself when you're doing something good. That's why I like that idea of it's all co-creative. Because if you look at it, I think just the other way, like just where it's just entities, then you're kind of stripping yourself of your freedom and individuality.
Yeah, that's a very interesting, point that you put in there, co-creative. And I think that this is a big thing in relationships. What's the word that has been used and all relations are? When they use it in a negative context always.
Codependent.
Codependent.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
It's a psychological term.
like, I don't believe that. I think co-creation is based upon codependency. But there's a negative side to codependency and a positive side to codependency.
It's a spectrum, I think. Hold on one second. I'm going to turn on my heat, but I'm listening. Go ahead.
Yeah, man. I think that this whole codependency, the way it's been sold to us, is like you need to steer away from all. But in the real world, you depend upon the microbes in your gut. And they depend upon you to make the choices to eat the right food, to keep them healthy, to keep you healthy. And there's a healthy dependency.
Mm-hmm.
In the real world, you depend upon your friends and your as moral support.
Yeah.
And it's not weakness to go and
No.
speak to your friends about something that's troubling you and to let them be there for you as a moral support and to be there for them. Oh, but you're depending on your friend. Yes, well, this is sort of what like communities are built about. There's a certain amount of dependence and there's a certain part of acknowledgement that I'm part of a group. I'm not just me. And if I become messed up, I'm going to mess up my group. So I owe it to them to be a better me for them and for me. And they owe it to me to be a better them. And so there's this subtle codependency, which is necessary. But then like there is an obsessive codependency.
Yeah. This is
And
actually
I think
how...
now they've...
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah?
Sorry. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
No. You do, please. I was
going to say, this is how I got into, probably even before I got into a lot of the truth research I was doing in the spiritual research. I first started in psychology in this specific aspect of it, which was narcissism and codependency. Covert narcissism, grandiose narcissism, and the opposite end, which is usually a codependent. And that brought me to like this thing that happens, which I think I talked about last week, the sort of delusional fantasy that can be created between people who are at the extremes of these spectrums. And I did this because I got out of a relationship that was really horrible. It was mentally abusive. Like, to me, I was taken advantage of, and I realized, but I didn't blame that person. I blame myself because I realized I didn't set boundaries. I let someone take advantage of me, and I've done it before. And it stemmed from childhood, from having a mother who like relied on me way too much for emotional support when she should have probably been doing that with like my father or an adult. And this happens to everyone. But by understanding this, you can get to the point where you realize what is the healthy point in codependency. Like where is it healthy and where is it become unhealthy? It becomes unhealthy clearly when you're letting people make you do things that you really don't want to do. So it's a very different thing than what I think what you're talking about, and that subtle difference it should be spoken about so people understand it's okay to like need community and want to share things with people around you, because that proves that you're not like a total recluse, shut off. It's a very stubborn person who thinks they don't need any sort of advice or help, and that almost then gets into the other side of the spectrum, which is narcissism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the narcissistic disorder potential.
Yeah. What
From
are you
being
too? You're too good.
completely
You're too good.
disconnected.
Are you too good to ask a question from one of your friends? Are you too good to ask for help? Like, why do you think you're so special that you don't need it? That's definitely a narcissistic tendency.
I think that that's a big problem that we're getting these days in society because of the interweb, because people are getting to portray themselves as like I'm that person, and that person is perfect.
Yeah.
That person is perfect, but like none of us are actually perfect. If we're honest, we look at ourselves, we go like, we're not perfect, dude. Like, did you notice when you went into the loo and you did a number 2? How did it smell? Roses, roses, roses. No, 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 no. Come on. It wasn't roses. Roses, roses. You know, but we want to portray ourselves like somebody who poops out little rose petals. And you know, it's rather fundamentally narcissistic. The whole social networking thing has been set up, I believe, to turn us into narcissists. And I think a big part of narcissism
Absolutely.
is connected to the fact that we are in this narcissistic disorder and we are getting lost in it.
Yeah.
And
No, absolutely. 100%. 100%.
And-
I think did I say this with you last week where I was like, what's really happening, especially in the political realm, is we have the narcissist. Oh shit. Back.
I
Okay.
don't know if it's you or me.
I
You
don't
froze
either.
for a second, but you were saying we have this narcissistic.
We have like the narcissistic politicians on, like, say, the Democratic side, the narcissistic media on the Democratic side, and then we have the people who are following them who are like a mix. But let's just say for at the start, they're all codependent on the information they're getting from them and what they're being told. Together they interact and they create this disassociated false reality. And if you try to tell them that their reality is untrue, they attack you. And the same thing is true with the other side. Both of these sides act like the macrocosm of the microcosm of this narcissistic codependent relationship. And what happens then is those codependents start to become narcissists themselves, because that's what happens after enough of the abuse happens, after the codependent gets so just traumatized by being in this relationship with the narcissist where they're gaslit, they're told things that don't disassociate them from what they think is reality, because they're being told something totally different by the narcissist they're in the relationship with. They become narcissists themselves and they start doing the same thing to other people. It's a vicious cycle, and everyone's stuck in it in this culture of ours unless you're aware of it.
I think you're so on point there. I think it is so much a part of our everyday normality that we don't see it. And unfortunately now all of our heroes are often narcissists, Hollywood as well. And the bloody characters they portray in the films are becoming more narcissistic by the day. So we are now worshipping narcissists that pretend to be narcissists, and we're calling them stars, and we are idolizing them and think, I'd love to be a star like that person, which means I'd love to be a narcissist portraying a narcissist. There's something quite twisted about
It's
the whole
really,
idea.
really dark, actually. And when I came out here and I had left my band after having some experiences with like smaller labels, and I could kind of see how like there was some of this that was going on in those labels that I didn't like, but it wasn't that bad. But when I came here and started acting a little bit, and I could see that like this lifestyle is freaking filled with just, you have to have like if you want to be an actor in this town, like back at least when I first got here, you have to basically you're selling your soul. There's no way you're going to have a healthy relationship ever with another individual, because you're constantly being put in situations that compromises that relationship. And
Did you
everyone
go to
thinks
acting
it's so.
school?
I went to classes here with a decent teacher and finally found one I liked, and then after that it was very brief, probably a year of one or two, what was it, one class a month, or started maybe one class every other week and then one class a month. But I just, the more and more I did it, and I did 2 films and I was on the sets and I really didn't like what I was seeing. I felt super uncomfortable. That's why I started editing and working on the production side of things. So I was like, if I'm going to make a film, I'm going to make it myself, because I want it to be something that doesn't make me feel awkward. Even if I'm not doing anything wrong, there's other people who are around me still.
Yeah, I think that makes interesting point. And I noticed your acting is really good. I noticed your music videos. I thought, damn, I wonder if I was gonna ask you. I wonder if he did some acting, because like you really did pretty good on all of the.
Oh yeah, that
music
was
videos.
before.
I saw
That was
you.
before I even got into any acting. But I wasn't great in my first movie. I didn't know what I was doing. The second movie that was better, but like by that point too, I was starting to have like a little chip on
The
my
bit of-
shoulder about the industry, like being like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, because it's, especially like if I had a girlfriend at the time, which I didn't when I was doing the 2 movies, but I could imagine, like, if I did, say I had a romantic scene with someone and they just like, there's certain ways that they do it, which it's tasteful. But it's still, there's so many things that you wind up seeing that you're gonna have to do that just, it's not appropriate. It's not like you're gonna hurt someone that you love, and you're doing it for what? For fame? Like, you could make movies where you don't have to pretend you're having sex with some girl and getting in a bed with her and actually simulating it pretty hard. Like, and this is how every freaking thing I was seeing and being told I had to do to be successful. And I'm just like, nah, I'm not down with that.
Yeah, no, I get you, dude. It's we're living in a crummy society. How's that for a good way to put it? We're living in
Yeah.
a very crummy society where we're like all hoodwinked and we're basically lost. We're basically becoming delusional. We're becoming mentally ill. We're becoming narcissistic. We're learning to portray a false sense of who we are on a social platform, because we have to socially compete with all these other false entities that are more perfect than life itself. And this is how the average person feels. So like we're all being taught to act,
Yeah.
badly.
And they make the kids want fame. They make them want to come out to work in movies, and then they make them, if they're a girl, usually they're in every movie they're banging some dude for pretending to bang some dude, when usually that's means they're taking off the majority of their clothes and simulating sex with them. And how does that destroys your soul after a while? How do they expect those people to never have normal relationships? That's why you see the relationships in Hollywood people have. There are no stable relationships in Hollywood. It's a mess.
Yeah, I think it's by design, because then we go and imitate that in the rest of us.
Yep.
And then we become better for the economy. Because now we blokes, we need a nicer car to attract the next hot chick. And she's a woman, she needs better boobs, because her boobies aren't good enough. She needs better lips, because her lips aren't good enough. She needs a new nose, and her hair color is not going to work. She have to go to the hairdresser, And the blokes are like apart from having a better car, they got to have a better job, they got to have better money, they got to. So like there's this whole ridiculous drama that we're concocting. Is my camera lagging, or was it just me?
There's a little bit of lag that's starting up.
Yeah, man. I think it's a big deal. I honestly think it's a bigger problem even than what it's a big deal, if I'm
And
honest.
that's just part of it. I mean, obviously, then there was all the woke stuff that was going on too, which, if you didn't go along with, which I didn't, and that caused problems. But I don't care. I caused so many problems when I was doing the little bit of acting that I did. Like pretty much everyone, any agent I had stopped working with me like that. I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. Get the fuck out of here. It's like, who are you to tell us you're not doing something? I'm just like, I'm not doing something that I'm not comfortable with doing. Get that. Find something else. Go. Bye. And then they drop me or something. I don't care.
So you don't want to miss your girlfriend, am I right?
Oh yeah, she's gonna be home soon. I might have to go get her. That's the thing.
Yeah. So I don't want to distract you from doing what you need to do. You want her to be home safe.
Yeah, I know. I hate the fact that she works so late out here, man. It's getting too dangerous out here. Speaking of negative entities, there's something going on out here, man. There's a bad frequency in this area. This whole
I
state.
live in South Africa, dude.
So you probably know.
I know the score, dude. Like women don't walk around at night. Okay, in the suburb where I am, it's quite nice.
It's actually crazy how different it's gotten here in the course of 5 years. It's like night.
Yeah.
It's almost night and day. Like it was not this bad 5 years ago. You could walk around at night and feel, at least in the good neighborhoods, like where I used to live, and even this neighborhood. Now this neighborhood, no, I wouldn't even. Just because there's crackheads that just randomly show up.
Yeah.
And then you don't know what they're gonna do.
Well, you can guess.
Yeah.
I mean, they're obviously going to light up a crack pipe, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you don't know what they're gonna do.
But what do they do afterwards?
You just don't know what they're gonna do if they walk by you. If they're gonna try to grab something from you, which I mean, literally just happened recently to one of my buddies. He got some guy walked by him and just punched him.
The guy walked past him and did what?
Punched him in the face. And luckily my friend this is my buddy who I was telling you about, who was the ex-military guy, and he's a big dude, and he hit him back, and the guy then was like laying in the center of the street for like 10 minutes before he got up and stumbled away. He was like, I didn't even punch him with a closed fist. I just smacked him and he fell down and I was like, oh, he was on drugs. I was like, I told you to be careful out there by your truck, because like these people just they're nuts.
Yeah, that's a bit weird, you know.
Yeah.
You can get in a lot of trouble like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first time something like that's happened to me around, like, but I just know I see it, you know, I see that there's people doing things they shouldn't be doing, and they're acting funny, and usually you can avoid them, but what is the one chance you can't when you're in a bad situation?
You're always going to have that kind of potential. There's always going to be that weirdness when it comes to a lot of these substances.
Yeah.
But yeah, brother, maybe we should close down the show. I hope you all have been enjoying the show.
Thank you guys for joining us.
Hope you guys got what you came for. And I managed to download the video stream.
Awesome.
Not the audio, but it doesn't matter. I can clip the audio from it if I need to.
Okay.
What matters is that it's not lost. Not reliant upon YouTube. But I think this should be saved on Rumble. There's a Rumble in the middle of the jungle.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I'll
check the Rumble
download.
and make sure.
I'll download what I can off this, and then next time we do it, just deconnect me the day before or something, so I could stream it live on mine too, and then we'll reconnect me if I need to download stuff, and if we could just keep going back and forth until I'm probably going to get the subscription soon anyway. So
if I were you, the moment you go off this thing, do you know where to get the download?
Yeah, I got it. I got the last episode. So
yeah, you just it'll be about 3 gigabytes, 4
Yeah.
gigabytes. This one might be about 4 or 5 gigs.
Yeah.
You know, might be 6 gigs.
It's not a problem.
With your camera, it might be 6 gigs.
It's not a
Anyway,
problem.
I'm sending you all big love and honor and blessings to you. I hope your girlfriend's gonna get home and you're
she
gonna
will,
have the
she
home
will.
all pretty and sweet and clean and romance. Get those candles lit, you know.
We're gonna go to bed when she gets home, probably.
Get the strawberries and cream ready. Otherwise, sending you big love, brother. It's been an
Yeah,
honor
man.
as always.
Always. It was a great time, great discussion.
Lovely
And
convo.
if you want to do it again next week, let's do it again. I should be.
Yeah, man.
There's going to be a week coming up where I'm out of town for work, so I'll let you know. But I think I should be here next
Yeah, man.
Tuesday. So
All
let's
good,
do it.
man. Lovely. So we'll schedule it next week.
Absolutely.
Otherwise,
thank you everyone for listening, man. For real.
all of
all
you
of
in
you
the
guys.
chat have a lovely day. You have
Or
a
night.
lovely day, brother. Night.
You too, brother.
And,
You too, brother. Enjoy your day.
Blessed be.